The story opens with a scene in the human world. A group of people, young and old, were looking up at the sky in astonishment, shouting, "What is that?" From the sky, a menacing creature's red-orange pupil stared down at the crowd below. It was a disaster. Not just one, but countless other monsters were wreaking havoc, charging towards the people, causing them to flee in terror. One day, a large hole appeared in the sky, and from there, humanity's disaster began. Monsters started to spread across the world, and the peaceful lives of people were gone forever. These monsters, with their sharp, bloodthirsty teeth, attacked the people around them, and cities were destroyed. In a dark alley, some monsters were closing in on two young children, who were hugging each other and trembling with fear. In the end, all that was left for humanity was despair. Soon, the grotesque monsters lunged at the two children. The children, terrified, closed their eyes and hugged each other tightly, facing the monster's attack. Dreadful growls echoed continuously, but suddenly, the growls stopped. The two children, surprised, opened their tear-stained eyes and looked forward. Suddenly, a large figure with long hair flowing in the wind appeared. In this despair, humanity found new hope. In an instant, this person had destroyed all the brutal monsters. This person seemed to be a hunter. Not only were there those who used physical skills, but there were also mages who controlled the elements. These were people who had been granted extraordinary powers. Suddenly, a person approached the two children. They used their healing magic to quickly heal the children. Their appearance brought hope to humanity in the darkness. These hunters acquired their powers thanks to. At this moment, a hand with a few bandages wrapped around it was drawing scribbles on the wooden floor. As they drew, the person explained more about the power of hunters, which was thanks to their traits, something the gods had granted them. Finishing their sentence, the person's tone became a bit angry as they said, "But because of that grace." Then, they clenched their fist and punched the floor, shattering it, and shouted in resentment, "The hunters out there can't do anything right." Standing before the 5-year-old Yu Sung, the person continued to scold him, saying, "Because of those traits, those hunters have become too reliant on them, leading to many dangerous mistakes." Hearing this, Yu Sung's beautiful face showed surprise at the person's words. Then, the person became resolute, their eyes cold, and asked Yu Sung, "In your opinion, what can determine the life of a hunter?" Upon hearing this, Yu Sung quickly raised his hand and replied, "Strength." Hearing the child's answer, the old master was quite satisfied and happily affirmed, "That's right. It's necessary to rely on one's physical strength to move forward. When you have power, no matter how strong the enemy monsters are, you can defeat them with just one punch." Then, the master pointed at the child and smirked, saying, "And that is why I adopted you from that orphanage." As he spoke, he remembered the day he took Yu Sung's hand and led her home. He began to explain more about the power hidden within Yu Sung. "You were born with a perfect physique." The master held up a soul orb and said proudly, "First, the 9-path harmony. That is your unique physique." Yu Sung was very interested in the small flame's ability to take shape. Thanks to that, you'll become smarter, more beautiful, and have an extremely abundant inner force. The master praised her before suddenly scaring her, making her shrink back. "But because of this, you might die young." Hearing this, Yu Sung's voice began to tremble as she replied, "Die?" The master added a blue flame to the dummy and encouraged the child, "But don't worry too much. Thanks to the flame from my finger, the dummy slowly sat up and became happy again." Nevertheless, it illustrates what I say about Yu Sung's strong body. To make up for it, you also have the yang dominant body. The yang energy will balance the yin energy, harmonizing the power within you. Then, the master gently placed his hand on the small child's shoulder. "Yu Sung," he said, as if coaxing her, "that is your unique gift." Then, he pointed at himself and confidently promised, "Therefore, I will train you to make your talent bloom like a flower. Will you study under me?" Hearing this, Yu Sung's eyes widened as she looked at him, almost seeing him as a teacher. Being held in the master's arms made her even more excited as she replied, "Yes." The master was extremely satisfied with the answer. "Indeed, my disciple." The first day of training. Time passed very quickly. Before long, Yu Sung was able to kill a large, healthy wild boar on her 711th day of harsh training. She was also 7 years old at this time. Holding the boar's tusk, she panted with exhaustion after the battle. Her master came over with a basin of herbs and exclaimed, "Oh my!" Seeing the boar covered in blood, he couldn't help but praise her. "At just 7 years old, you've already taken down 2 A-rank monsters." But at the same time, he pointed out what she still lacked. "But with your talent, you still aren't good enough." Yu Sung obediently sat down while her master bandaged her up and encouraged her, "You need to train harder." She happily replied, "Yes." Her master didn't forget to ask her a favor. "Now, go roast that boar, okay?" The days passed by like a gust of wind. On her 1040th day of training, Yu Sung could proudly say that she had punched down a large tree. "I did it. The child, not even 10 years old, turned to her master and boasted, "Master, I succeeded." But suddenly, he sighed in disappointment. He sat on countless fallen tree stumps and showed his disappointment. It's not good enough yet. So they continued to train until day 1785. This time, Yu-sung faced a large bug. She smoothly channeled her inner energy into her palm and unleashed a punch, God Fist. Yu-sung's foot shifted back in the thick smoke. Then, the rampaging dragonstone break was unleashed, creating a fog that covered the entire monster. The bugs that were glaring at her just moments ago were torn into pieces by the 10-year-old child. Her master's voice rang out beside her, drawing her attention. "Come on, stand up straight. Don't be like that." He was carrying the head of a giant monster and approached. "Don't be arrogant. You're not strong enough to face high-rank monsters yet." Yu-sung was used to this. Typical master. She thought to herself, "I still have so much more to learn." Seeing this, her master sat down and said, "All right, that's enough for today." She raised her hand and replied immediately, "Yes." It was unclear how much time had passed, but on day 2892, Yu-sung's opponent was no longer high-rank monsters. Instead, she had to face her master's grinning face. His shadow almost covered her entire small body. Then, suddenly, her master lunged forward. Yu-sung widened her eyes as she looked ahead. In front of her was the powerful fist of the person who had always taught her. She submissively raised her arms to defend. But her strength was still not enough, and Yu-sung was punched straight into the rocks. The 13-year-old's body stood firm even after taking such a blow. She even quickly rushed toward her master to retaliate. He continued to swing his hand to attack. This time, Yu-sung was surprised for a moment, but she immediately slipped behind her master while he was still reacting. Her eyes, full of determination, looked up at her master. Then, she launched a punch, which was also anticipated by her master. Smoke billowed everywhere, making it difficult for Yu-sung to see. But then, her expression turned to one of panic. Her fist was stopped by her master with just one finger. He laughed heartily and praised her. "You're a bit stronger now." His rough hand reached out. He placed his hand on Yu-sung's head and patted her as a reward. He was now a bit satisfied. "All right, it seems like your moves have improved a bit." She softly called out to him, "Master." Suddenly, her master's eyes lit up and he warned her, "But it's still not enough. The top hunters out there have people who are as strong as me, so be careful and don't be careless." Yu-sung looked at her master's scary face and worried, "Maybe one day when I go down the mountain like my master said." Imagining having to face countless masters made her feel like she was collapsing. "Will I have to face them?" Her small hand trembled with fear, but then she clenched it tightly with determination. "But, I've decided to become the strongest hunter." The fear disappeared as she told herself, "I've decided to become the strongest hunter." She pursed her lips and took a breath. Yu-sung said confidently, "I will try my best to train, master." Her master still patted her head with satisfaction. "That's what I like to hear from my disciple." And from that day on, Yu-sung diligently trained under the waterfall. After 4,421 days, her master's short legs slowly approached her. Then he stopped to speak to Yu-sung. Her master crossed his arms and said, "So, today is your last day with me." She also stepped out of the waterfall. Her well-honed, toned body was revealed. Yu-sung's brown hair was damp from bathing in the stream. Now, Yu-sung had become a sturdy 17-year-old young man. He gently put on his clothes. He tied his hair with a blue ribbon. He also didn't forget to wrap his hands with bandages. Her master pondered for a moment and said, "You've trained hard, and I'm proud of you." He threw something strange. "Take it." Yu-sung caught it with a blank expression. In his palm, there was a strange, sharp ring. "This is." It began to emit a blue light. A system panel appeared right in front of him. He read the words written on it. Jian Academy. Her master explained with a hint of regret, "It's time for you to go to the academy to study and develop further." Yu-sung clasped his hands together to thank him. "Thank you for teaching me." The two stood in a picturesque scene, the wind blowing through their hair. He was quick to leave. Peach blossoms fell on the steps he was walking on. As he walked down the mountain he had only heard about, Yu-sung recalled the things he had been told. "Remember what I said? There are many masters in this world." Inside a virtual arena, two girls were waiting for the countdown to begin the battle. 3. Both had immense power and were not afraid. 2. There were also other people watching the match. You will meet opponents that you will have difficulty facing. 1. As soon as the command was given, lightning and ice power flooded the arena. Elsewhere, something suddenly flashed by. Raindrops fell onto the surface of a lake, revealing a mysterious figure. He held a piece of paper and wiped the raindrops from his face. "But the experiences you will have there, where a large clock stood, it was dark in the night, will help you become the strongest among them." Under a branch of brilliant cherry blossoms, there were two groups of 3 friends camping. Her master was always watching Yu-sung with his faith. "For you. You are my disciple. He stood on the roof to watch the new steps in his life. Yu-sung kept a relaxed demeanor and continued to walk through the cherry blossom season. Early in the morning, a car pulled up in front of a large building. After the dungeon outbreak, humanity had turned to education as a means of creating powerful hunters. Yu-sung, carrying his luggage, walked through the gates of the academy, a place built to nurture the strongest hunters through the best education, the Hunter Academy. His attire was different from the city dwellers, but he walked confidently. He trained with various weapons and watched students playfully engaging with each other around the school grounds, learning about monster characteristics. Yu-sung continued to the school's park, studying strategies for clearing dungeons. He even passed by a magic class, learning about their traits. Yu-sung raised his hand to shield his eyes from the bright sunlight. A school appeared hazily in front of him. For 3 years, students at the academy would learn all the necessary information to become hunters, and, of course, among these academies, this one was known as the best. Yu-sung smiled happily upon seeing it. So this is it, he thought. The modern and magnificent school in front of him was the Gown Academy. Suddenly, a strange voice rang out beside him. The school's emblem was printed on the speaker's clothing. Principal Byung-chul extended his hand and said kindly, "Welcome to Gown." He smiled warmly as he shook Yu-sung's hand. "Hello, you are a very bright-looking young man." Yu-sung was impressed with the principal. He seemed like a good person. They walked to the principal's office, where Byung-chul greeted him warmly and inquired, "Please, make yourself comfortable. Although we are not very close yet, would you like some black tea?" Yu-sung accepted the tea while the principal asked, "So, you want to enroll at Gown?" On the surface, he was smiling, but in his heart, Byung-chul was thinking, even if he looks like a homeless person, he's still the disciple of that eunuch. Thinking about the money Yu-sung would help him earn, he became very pleased. His abilities must be exceptionally strong, he thought. He couldn't help but ask, "It may be a redundant question, but your trait must be S-rank, right?" Yu-sung smiled lightly and replied, "No, it's F-rank." Byung-chul froze in shock. He tried to convince himself, "You must be joking. The disciple of that guy can't possibly be F-rank." The principal tried lowering the level. "Then, a rank?" But Yu-sung repeated his answer. "I'll say it again. My trait is F-rank." This time, he even showed it to the principal to make him believe it. This, F-rank? He read the description. Trait, high concentration. Effect, increases concentration to match mana usage. Byung-chul clutched his chest and exclaimed, "I can't believe it. He's really F-rank?" Yu-sung smiled cheerfully and said, "My master told me to become the strongest hunter without relying on my trait." The principal groaned and held his head. Even if that's the case. He was so disappointed that he couldn't even look at Yu-sung anymore. Now Byung-chul was starting to get angry. "I was wondering why that old man helped me," he thought. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and muttered to himself, "I don't want to increase the number of F-rank students in the academy." Nevertheless, Byung-chul had to open the system panel. "But since I promised, there's no other way." He pressed a button on the screen and spoke, "Now, I'll tell you this." His hand clenched as he closed the system panel. At Gown, skills are everything. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Yu-sung. "If you want to enroll at Gown, then prove your skills." Byung-chul offered Yu-sung a chance, "Even if you are F-rank." He sat there, looking at the principal for a moment. Immediately afterward, a notification was issued. Mission: Urgent Enrollment Test. Target: Shin Yu-sung. F-rank. Description: Find an opponent to duel. Requirements: S-rank to D-rank students, ranked 1 to 65. Reward: 50 SP. Everyone who saw the notification was confused. Yu-sung was reading the information as well. News about Yu-sung's master also stirred up. A young man excitedly said, "Just beating an F-rank gets you 50 SP? However, a girl was more cautious, "But he's the disciple of the Fist King. I'm a bit suspicious." Suddenly, a figure appeared, pushing between them. "What?" Hejin asked them without containing his killing intent. "Is the trait of the One-Fist disciple F-rank? And you get 50 SP just for fighting him?" The frightened young man replied, "Why yes, Hajin. That's what it says here." The red-haired man grinned, "I'm a Year 1 D rank. Yo Hajin, student rank 42. He lightly placed his hand on the young man's shoulder. Showing a friendly face, he asked, "This sounds a bit strange, doesn't it?" The young man stammered, "Why yes, it does," Hajin continued. "I think he might be a fraud." He flashed a bright smile. "Don't you think so?" The person next to him could only agree, Then Hajin let go of the student and warned, "Well, if any other guys in our class are gonna try him out, tell them I'm gonna deal with them." The student quickly agreed, "Okay." Before leaving, Hajin added, "Oh, and if anyone has a problem with that." He showed off a slightly arrogant look as he clenched his fist. "Then, try to fight me here." The hot-headed redhead pushed the door open and walked out. "See ya." The young man waved, "Be-bye." After Hajin left, he finally dared to say, "Well, we're doomed." Walking down the hallway, he laughed loudly. "Fighting an F rank and getting 50 SP? It's practically free. Maybe the Fist King will take me as a disciple instead of him." He couldn't stop smiling. "Just thinking about it gets me excited." Suddenly, his shoulder bumped into another person. Hajin angrily shouted, "Hey, where are your eyes?" But that anger and the words immediately subsided when he saw who he had bumped into. The distinctive white hair of the girl fluttered in the wind. Adela looked at him with a cold expression. Adela Hortensia, student rank 1. Ajin lost all his arrogance and immediately ran away with his tail between his legs. It's Adela, gotta run." Adela was left to her thoughts. The Fist King. That person. She remembered when her grandfather brushed her hair and told her stories of battles. "Adela, my ally is the strongest hunter. With him, we have nothing to fear." She couldn't clearly remember her grandfather's face, but his words were engraved in her memory. "Even a genius like me lost to him with a very close margin, so remember this person. The strongest hunter in human history and the ally I'm always proud of." And the person her grandfather praised was none other than the Fist King, Yuwanuk. Adela whispered to herself, "The disciple of that hunter." Her eyes looked down thoughtfully. A sparkle flashed in Adela's thoughts. If it's true, then maybe, at the very least, he could make it to that place. In the waiting room, Yu Sung was happily trying on his new uniform. Siwoo, who was next to him, considerately asked, "You look quite handsome in your uniform. Does it fit well?" Yu Sung looked over every inch of his clothes and replied, "Thank you. The clothes fit perfectly." Siwoo smiled with satisfaction. "No need to thank me, I'm pretty good at these things." Lee Siwoo, Year 1 F rank, student rank 72. Yu Sung even tried moving his arms and legs to test the fit. "The movement is really easy too," he said. Siwoo gave a thumbs up in agreement. Hunters prioritize comfortable movement, after all. Then he set up a bracelet for Yu Sung. And finally, Siwoo tried to create a shield and instructed Yu Sung on how to use it. "It has a shield that will activate when you are in danger. It's very safe, so go all out in your fight." Looking at this new student, Siwoo predicted a few things. But his first opponent is Yo Hajin. This is just an enrollment test, but there will be many strong opponents coming for him. Well, no need to scare him before he starts. Someone outside waved them to go. "It's time." Siwoo patted Yu Sung's shoulder to encourage him. "Good luck. Remember to win." Yu Sung, who was also very determined, clenched his fist. "The enrollment test of Gaon, which even my master acknowledges. Yes, I will definitely pass it." The stage light shone directly on the two people standing below. The girl next to the microphone winked at the audience. "KBS reporter Yahello is here," she exclaimed. "I'm here to report on Shin Yu Sung, who is attracting a lot of attention as the disciple of the Fist King." Byung Chul, standing beside her, thought irritably, "So loud. If it wasn't for them funding information for the academy." She began to lead the match with her excited voice. "It's time to introduce the participants." First, she panned the camera to Yu Sung. "Here we have the mysterious student, shrouded in secrets, Shin Yu Sung." Opposite him, Hajin smirked confidently. And on the other side, we have the 42nd ranked student in the course, nicknamed the Uncontrollable Ship, Yo Hajin. The reporter asked Hajin through the microphone. He must be overwhelmed to participate in a match that is attracting so much attention. What made Yo Hajin want to participate? He immediately replied, Ajin shrugged nonchalantly. "It is a bit overwhelming, as a student of the prestigious Gaon Academy, and also." Two other students who overheard what Hajin said were surprised. "I want to know if he really deserves to enroll at Gaon or if he is just relying on his master's achievements." The reporter and the principal liked that response. "I see." Ajin confidently declared on air, "I promise to show everyone a perfect match that will not disgrace the name of Gaon Academy." A girl wearing sunglasses sneered after listening to those arrogant words. "What's up with him? He's only here for the SP, and his rank is only around 40, right? How ridiculous. Does anyone want to bet on who'll win?" Ajin clenched his fist and raised it high. "I will," he shouted loudly to grab the audience's attention. "I'll show you all." Yu Sung, on the other hand, just quietly listened to the reporter's praise. What a noble ambition from student Yo Hajin. Then the reporter turned to him, catching him off guard. "Student Shin Yu Sung, before the match begins, can you share some of your current feelings?" Yu Sung took a deep breath. He uttered just one word, "I'll do my best." The reporter was impressed by his reply. That was a brief yet impactful statement. Hajin still kept his arrogant attitude, belittling Yu Sung, worthless. But Yu Sung remained calm. The command to start the match was issued, counting down for the match to begin. Without even fighting, Hajin started taunting Yu Sung first. "Trash to your F rank like you should know your place. I'll end this match quickly. Ready?" He raised both fists and planned, "As soon as it starts, I'll use my trait." The reporter's voice rang out as Hajin's vision went dark. Begin. When he looked ahead again, no one was there. Hejin was shocked. Huh? Yu-sung had already appeared in front of him like a gust of wind. Yu-sung's foot rotated 180 degrees. His eyes, like a predator, were fixed on his prey. Hejin could only gape at the incoming attack. Yu-sung kicked him straight in the chin, sending him flying into the air. The students were stunned, uttering shocked exclamations. The reporter was excited, and Principal Byung-chul was intrigued. What? The girl observing on the monitor also made an exclamation. The reporter quickly resumed his commentary. ST student Yo Hajin was taken down. His defensive magic was broken in a single hit. The battle was shorter than Yu-sung had imagined. The final announcement was made. The winner is Shin Yu-sung. In the audience, a shy girl's voice rang out. She clapped and looked at Yu-sung with admiration. He actually won. Hejin's vision then slowly cleared. His chin was red, and his mind was still hazy. My body. Hejin quickly sat up straight. Where am I? The medic replied, guess. She was wearing a stethoscope and smiling. Of course, you're in the infirmary. She handed him a glass of water. Drink this and rest, she advised. Hejin accepted it and answered politely, ah, yes. He remembered the battle that had just happened and was confused. I didn't even see him move. As he drank the water, a suspicion arose in Hejin's mind. Definitely. Now, Yu-sung was like a hidden demon in his eyes. He's not just an F-rank student. He's clearly S-rank. The match ended early, so the principal and Yu-sung returned to his office to receive the results. Byung-chul's face darkened. Student Shin Yu-sung. Yu-sung anxiously waited for the decision. Then, the principal suddenly smiled with satisfaction. Byung-chul stated what he had been hoping to hear. I officially congratulate you on joining Gown Academy. They exchanged cups of water again. I knew you would pass the test, he said. Yu-sung accepted it and replied, thank you. In Byung-chul's heart, he suddenly remembered the Fist King's face. Even if he is F-rank, he is still the Fist King's disciple. I worried too much. The Fist King was proudly asking, how is my disciple? Yu-sung, in front of him, was enjoying a piece of cake. It's still too early to say for sure. Byung-chul continued to remind the young man in front of him. Of course, the entrance exam is just the beginning. He pointed out the direction for Yu-sung to take. Yu-sung, if you want to follow in your master the Fist King's footsteps and become the best hunter, you must aim for a goal here. His index finger pointed upward to signal something. The goal he wanted from Yu-sung was to join the 7 Stars, one of the top 7 ranked students representing Gown Academy. Yu-sung took a sip of water and whispered, the 7 Stars. The principal was also pondering some issues that had arisen. Of course, no F-rank student can join the group, he thought. Yu-sung anxiously asked him, do you think I can become one of the 7 Stars? Byung-chul extended his hand to him and affirmed, of course. He still wore his trademark smile and welcomed him. The path to join the group is always open. However, the words that followed were kept in his head. But of course, there are only 7 spots. At that moment, someone knocked on the door and asked for permission. Principal, may I come in? Byung-chul seemed to have been waiting for that person for a long time. Ah, you're here. Come in. The student walked into the room as the principal introduced him. Student Yu-sung, since this is your first time at Gown Academy, I asked another student to guide you. Siwoo waved to them and smiled. Yu-sung, we meet again. As Yu-sung and Siwoo walked through the hallway, they attracted a lot of attention from the students. I heard from the teacher that you needed someone to give you a tour of the school, Siwoo said, guiding him. Since we know each other already, I'll take on this job. Yu-sung was grateful for the offer, thank you. As they talked, Siwoo suddenly remembered something. I don't think I've told you my name, have I? The energetic young man extended his small hand. My name is Lee Siwoo. He smiled brightly as he made a new friend. It's nice to meet you. Yu-sung stared at him for a moment. Just call me Siwoo, he said. Then, Yu-sung's cheeks flushed pink with happiness. He quickly took Siwoo's hand. Me too. They continued to walk, attracting the eyes of many people. Siwoo mentioned Yu-sung's match from the previous day. I watched your match yesterday. It was amazing. The way you took down Yu-hajin. Remembering Yu-sung's one kick, Siwoo was filled with admiration. As soon as the match began, you just knocked him out. The sky outside suddenly darkened. The footsteps of another person were heard while Siwoo was still praising him. No wonder you're the disciple of the Fist King. The other students all ran away in fear. Yu-sung was still talking with Siwoo. It was nothing. I still have a lot to learn. Don't be so humble. Even the seniors were shocked watching the match. The girl's lips, which were always smiling, gradually came into view. After all, Hajin is an elite seed. A band with printed letters on her arm was clearly displayed. As Siwoo was talking non-stop, as long as he doesn't go past D rank, he could. A voice interrupted him. Could you move out of the way? The two turned to look ahead. Lightning flashed outside, lighting up the glass window. The girl looked at them with her green eyes and a mysterious smile. Ayun tilted her head and slowly spoke. You. Siwoo quickly moved aside. I'm sorry, we were chatting. But instead of moving like he did, Yu-sung just stood there, making Siwoo wonder. Yu-sung? Yu-sung's face showed a rare look of horror. Ayun glanced at him as the person next to her asked, is he new here? Ayek's face darkened and he complained about the two students. What are you doing? Move out of the way. Ayun stopped him to talk a bit more. Wait, I think I've seen him somewhere before. Yu-sung pursed his lips as she directed her words to him. I didn't expect us to meet here. Ayun smiled again, but it made her opponent shudder. Right? She and Hia continued to walk past Yu-sung in a tense atmosphere. As she brushed past his shoulder, Ayun began to whisper, Shin Ya-sung. Her words pierced Yu-sung's mind, making him sweat profusely. You disgrace to the family. Ayun left him with such fear and didn't say anything more. They slowly left the hallway, as the other students remained silent. Siwoo was finally able to recover his thoughts. Just as I thought, there's something shady going on here. Looking at Yu-sung's attitude, he was worried. He came from the Shin family. Oh, ah. Inside, ghostly voices echoed in his mind. Yu-sung, how does it feel to be a defective product? The girl's face was close to his ear, so that he could hear it clearly. I'm so curious, because I'm not a worthless failure like you. Then her smile grew bigger and turned into an obsession. Yu-sung stood in the darkness, powerless against the girl's control. Yu-sung. Siwoo's voice brought him back to reality. Yu-sung? His friend looked at him with concern. Yu-sung, are you okay? Your face has turned pale. Yu-sung tried to answer. I'm fine, but Siwoo was worried and advised him, you should go back to your room and rest. It's best. The window was already wet with raindrops. It was raining heavily outside. Let me give you the tour another time. For now, let me take you to the dorm. Yu-sung, with a bad mood, agreed. Okay. Their dorm wasn't too far away, and in just a moment, Siwoo exclaimed, we're here. He considerately opened the door for Yu-sung. The room inside was a bit cramped and dark. Is this really the room of a new student? Siwoo was a bit embarrassed as he said, it's a bit, but when you rank up, you'll be able to stay in a better room. But Yu-sung was happy to receive the room. It's perfect. I used to sleep in trees. Siwoo felt relieved after hearing that. Well, that's good then. He handed his friend a golden key. Yu-sung, I put my number in your pocket and here's the key. Also, he smiled friendly. Feel free to ask me anything if you're wondering anything. Yu-sung's mood was slowly getting better because of him. Thank you for helping me today. They said goodbye and returned to their own rooms. Yu-sung entered his room and began to take off his coat. He followed his routine and went to the bathroom to take a shower first. After drying his hair, he looked for something to eat in the fridge. A banana milk carton with a smiley face appeared inside the fridge. It was what Yu-sung chose to drink that night. After finishing his personal tasks, he relaxed on the bed. Outside, the rain continued to pour heavily. Yu-sung looked out the window and suddenly remembered something. Rain. The sky outside had darkened due to the heavy rain. That day was also raining like this. The scene he remembered was just a grayscale. Yu-sung was sitting in a car, also looking outside. The driver was taking him through the rain to a certain place. The driver spoke, you can blame me all you want. He didn't remember what he looked like, but he remembered his words very clearly. But there are some things that people have to do. Next to him, two people were laughing. If you resist your destiny, you'll only get hurt. He repeated the mission that Yu-sung had to undertake. You, who grew up in the Shin family, you must understand this. Young Yu-sung could only sadly comply. Yes, sir. The car drove along an empty road and stopped. Yu-sung looked outside. The rain was still pouring down. A strange person appeared, holding an umbrella. She grabbed his arm as his father left. Then, they walked together in the opposite direction. Suddenly, Yu-sung turned back. But no one was there waiting for him. Just the car that was slowly driving away. Yu-sung's eyes were filled with sadness and a hint of disappointment. That day's scene only made him think of one thing. A memory filled with pain. He had thought about these things while lying on his bed. He couldn't shed a single tear. Even when Yu-sung had to face his own results then, he had thought that it was all his fault for not living up to his parents' expectations. The cruel screen displayed the letter F to affirm his skills. He fearfully looked behind him. Born with F-rank potential. Although his face was dark, there was no smile anymore. Not as excellent as Nuna. Yu-sung's small eyes slowly closed with his own thoughts. That's why my parents abandoned me. At least I think so. Outside, he still appeared happy when socializing with other people. If I don't think it's sad, then it won't be sad. And among the crowd, he had to live alone. But from the beginning, that was impossible. I'm too weak. The self-reproach was engraved deeply in the little boy's mind. Like a defective product, unlike Nuna, Yu-sung nearly gave up and could only give a sad smile. Then, but on that very day, he had met a large back. That person extended his hand to him and introduced himself. I am Yu Wanuk, the Fist King, one of the strongest hunters in the world. Holding an umbrella, he shook it as he laughed. I see great potential in you. Come with me. Yu Sung looked at the man with innocence. That's a distant dream, he said, turning his head away. I don't want to. I already know everything. The man was surprised, and his smile disappeared. I'm so tired, Yu Sung said. Yu Sung's mouth moved as he spoke the painful words he had misunderstood. The greater the expectations, the greater the disappointment. The little boy's mind was surrounded by darkness, and his thoughts were becoming more and more pessimistic. The more you believe in me, the more disappointed you will be. Knowing that from the beginning, but the Fist King spoke to bring his attention back. You're quite intelligent compared to kids your age. His lips curled up. But you're wrong. Wanuk spoke of his own ideology. Someone who is never afraid to fail. He also moved closer to Yu Sung, crouching down so that he could look at him in the eyes. That person will always win and be the strongest. The umbrella was thrown away without any hesitation. A gust of wind hit Yu Sung's face, surprising him. I was once like you. The power from Wanuk emanated and overwhelmed everything that was suppressing Yu Sung. The strongest person fails more than others and experiences despair to the extreme. He promised him with the determination of the strongest, I will always be by your side. Yu Sung's eyes lit up even more upon hearing those encouraging words. If one day you cry, his eyes reddened as he was about to cry, or if you feel despair. The darkness around him disappeared with his tears. Remember that I will always be here. The gray colors were slowly being replaced by the colors of life. The Fist King's hand extended out once again. Wanuk smiled broadly as he offered him, follow me, you will become the strongest hunter. Because of him, Yu Sung's colors had returned. I guarantee it with the Fist King's honor. The immature boy slowly extended his hand. Then he touched the Fist King's hand and opened a new chapter in his life. Of course, everything is different now. Yu Sung secretly smiled to himself as he thought, that memory makes me feel happy rather than sad, and those memories will slowly fade away and be replaced with something better. Outside, the rain continued to rustle, but everything was no longer as sad as before. The bracelet on Yu Sung's arm suddenly vibrated. You have a message. He turned and opened the screen to see who was messaging him. Siwoo had sent countless messages to check up on him. Is your room okay? If you have anything to worry about, just ask me. Your face turned dark in the hallway, so I took you back. I'm so smart, aren't I? The smile on Yu Sung's face bloomed even more than before. He could feel relieved as he messaged back immediately. Everything's fine now. After replying to the messages, Yu Sung returned to his optimism. The past is no longer important. He could calmly close his eyes and fall asleep. For now, the new day began with warm rays of sunlight streaming through the window. The alarm clock ticked away the seconds, reaching 7 a.m. The hair of the young girl stirred slightly as she lazily reached out a hand. Then, she pressed the button on the clock to silence the alarm. Sumire rubbed her eyes and slowly opened them, looking around. Waking up after a good night's sleep, she couldn't help but stretch and yawn. Toast popped out of the toaster after it was done cooking. She took it out and spread some strawberry jam on it to eat with eggs and bacon. Sumire dried her still wet hair and ate her simple breakfast as usual. After eating her fill, she started getting ready by clipping a large hair clip in her hair. She looked in the mirror and felt that she looked cute and neat. Sumire smiled and complimented herself. Perfect. It was time to go to school, so she opened the door and stepped out. I'm off. Walking down the street with many other students, she couldn't help but feel excited. It's been a month since I transferred, but I'm still amazed by Gaon Academy. Sumire felt very satisfied with everything at the academy. The superior facilities were evident compared to many other academies in the city. The training rooms, the virtual training techniques, the largest battle arena. They had many other modern facilities, such as mana recovery systems. And she understood one thing clearly, but not all those modern facilities are accessible. Accessing those things also had its conditions. All those facilities of the academy were only for the top students, like the 7 stars. Sumire sighed with frustration at her rank of 659 and her F-rank status. For a low-ranking student like me, it's just a pipe dream. She suddenly stopped and looked at the modern building of the school. The place she was looking at was very modern and special, and she couldn't help but think regretfully, I've passed this place every day when going to school, but it's still so far away. By now, class had already started, so Sumire joined the flow of students to move to the virtual reality room. This is my first time coming here. The teacher stood before them and spoke to calm the class down. All right, that's enough talking. He seemed very friendly as he introduced himself. Nice to meet you all. I'm Lin Xiao. A student asked him curiously, isn't Mr. Hyungho supposed to be here today? Xiao laughed cheerfully and replied, he's gone. He was recruited by China and left the academy, but you don't need to get excited, he reassured the students. I, Lin Xiao, am an instructor and also an S-rank hunter. If you trust and follow me, I'll ensure that you receive the best education. And being allowed to use the illusion room, which only high-ranking classes are allowed, is one of your benefits. Xiao was still speaking to inform them. With a low-rank class like yours, F rank, I will teach. Suddenly, Siwoo rushed in. Sorry teacher, we're late. He was catching his breath while pointing at Yu Sung next to him, who was smiling happily. I was too focused on guiding this new student. He then introduced himself. I'm Shin Yusung. As soon as Sumire saw him, her face flushed with surprise. He's... Yusung's innocent face made it impossible for her to mistake him. It's the new student I saw at the training arena. Teacher Xiao also recognized him and welcomed him. So you're the child in the rumors, the disciple of the Fist King? Yusung replied, yes, that's right. In Xiao's mind, thoughts began to form. A legendary hunter's F-rank disciple, how interesting. What a unique combination. In his eyes, Yusung's body was filled with the aura of a martial artist. He then patted his shoulder and praised, excellent, excellent. It seems like you haven't been lazy in your training. Yusung was not one to be outdone, and proudly showed off to him, I haven't missed a day of training. Xiao was even more pleased with him and smiled brightly. Good spirit, diligence and sincerity are very important for a hunter. The other students surrounded and witnessed an unbelievable scene. An F-rank student being recognized by an S-rank hunter. To start off energetically, Xiao decided to begin the lesson right away. Well then, student Shin Yusung, I will test your skills first. The room was very spacious, allowing them to unleash their techniques freely. There's no better place than the illusion room to prove whether your words are true or not. Xiao carefully instructed him, the basic setup is done. You know how to use it correctly, right? Touch the hologram to set the difficulty and start. That's it. Simple, isn't it? Yusung followed his instructions and set it up immediately. Yes, he set the training difficulty to dangerous. Rank 3, difficulty mode. Hard. The other students were again shocked. Rank 3? Are you kidding me? Random monster allocation. Orc tribe battle. Difficulty mode has been set to hard. Sumire also looked at Yusung with concern. Hard mode? But Yusung's finger didn't stop and he continuously increased the settings. Adjusting to hard mode. Orc fighting intelligence increased by 150%. Boss count increased by 3. Power multiplied by 2. The illusion room settings have been completed. After finishing, he turned to inform his teacher, I'm ready to start. Xiao was also a bit dumbfounded by his calm demeanor. Okay, go ahead. In his heart, he was beginning to have doubts. Is he really planning to go in there? Rank 3 in hard mode. It's the illusion room so there won't be any injuries. But can an F-rank person really do it? After being approved, Yusung walked with confident steps toward the training room. He didn't know if it was a bluff or true confidence. As he entered the training area, a notification appeared above his head. Environment settings, a Mac Rendell Pata. The surrounding scenery slowly transformed into another place. Rendering the image, 85%. Now, Yusung had officially stepped into a vast desert, making him amazed. So this is the illusion room. The first monster quickly appeared and approached Yusung. It was holding a crude spear in one hand. The other hand held a large and old axe. 2 large fangs of the monster were sticking out of its mouth. A total of 3 big and aggressive figures were standing before Yusung. One of them glared at him and was extremely angry. How dare you invade our territory? Then all 3 of them immediately swung their weapons and charged, kill him. Yusung also began to focus himself by closing his eyes. Then he abruptly opened both eyes to use his skills, high concentration. At that moment, the grotesque monsters stood aggressively with their weapons, staring at Yusung. But he didn't seem to care about them, closing his eyes as if nothing was happening. The red-skinned monster's eyes were sharp. It growled and asked, how dare you, human, set foot in our territory? Hearing this, Yusung suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was resolute, shining with a blue light as he activated his enhanced intellect. He looked at a rock in the distance and thought, I can feel their presence behind that rock. From behind the rock, Yusung sensed the presence of 2 monsters lurking. Seeing this, the 2 distant monsters drew their bows, intending to attack. Seeing all this, Yusung thought to himself, 2 hidden archers, huh? Yusung looked at the monster in front of him, glaring at him. He realized, they are planning to exhaust me using the warriors in front before finishing me with their arrows. Quite a standard tactic. It charged at him with the axe in its hand, attacking him brutally. The axe was getting closer and closer. Yusung still calmly closed his eyes, thinking, I know what to do now. He gently grabbed the monster's weapon and looked at it with sharp eyes. Yusung squatted down, still holding the red monster's weapon to block the axe from the other 2. The monster's weapon broke in half when he squeezed it tightly with his hands. Yusung placed his hand on its face, surprising it. He slammed its head into the ground. The other monsters immediately jumped at him, yelling, human, die. He quickly dodged their attacks. Yu-sung used wind magic, causing sand to swirl everywhere, and sent them flying away. 2 arrows were fired towards him. They were only a short distance away now. Suddenly, Yu-sung disappeared. The 2 archers were confused. He's gone. Where did the human go? From nowhere, he appeared behind them, placing both his hands on their heads. They asked each other. He vanished. Where did he hide? In a moment, the screams of the 2 monsters could be heard. A system panel appeared before Yu-sung, displaying information. Year 1, Class F student of Gaon Academy, Shin Yu-sung. Rank 3, hard difficulty, clean sweep. He smiled gently as he walked. Siwoo was surprised, stammering, "WH what?" Sumire was equally shocked as she saw the text on the system. A new record has been set. Xiao was incredulous. A first-year student able to move like that? Behind him, the students were also talking amongst themselves. What just happened? A new record. He smiled faintly, thinking, it wasn't luck. Xiao looked at Yu-sung adjusting his uniform and thought, he definitely has the skills to aim for the 7 stars. Light filled the ceiling of the academy. Siwoo's eyes sparkled as he looked at Yu-sung. He said admiringly, "You're amazing." He pointed at the announcement and excitedly exclaimed, "You set a new record on your first day." Siwoo spoke with admiration. "With your skills, it's definitely possible." Yu-sung was confused. "Possible what?" Siwoo explained, "You might have been told already, but this academy has rankings." A can of cola dropped. He and Siwoo sat together drinking. He started to explain in detail. To put it simply, skills are everything. In reality, there's a ranking system. 7 students stand at the top, and they're called. Siwoo half closed his eyes. He put his hands up, speaking to Yu-sung's intrigued face. "The 7 stars. Got it?" He then lowered his voice. "So, naturally, a student from a weak class has never been among the 7 stars." Hortensia looked up in surprise. The system panel displayed data. Record sweep, Rank 1, Shin Yu-sung, 1 minute 11 seconds. Rank 2, Adela Hortensia, 1 minute 23 seconds. Rank 3, Kim Yuna, 1 minute 55 seconds. She mumbled, "Shin Yu-sung." Hortensia froze and her mouth twitched. That name. She didn't move and just stood there, staring. Hortensia could clearly feel the change in her body. She thought, "My heart is pounding." But she remained cold. She walked and thought in her head, "I remember the only hunter that could defeat my grandfather." Hortensia's eyes narrowed. Confused, she thought. But, she looked at the system as a notification came. "You have a new message." She then slightly raised her hand. The system panel appeared. Gaon Academy, first semester team assignment. 18 hours, 29 minutes, 52 seconds. Scan fingerprint. Siwoo excitedly called out to Yu-sung. "Did you see that notification? Look, just touch it to confirm." He looked at the system. Yu-sung placed his hand to scan his fingerprint. "Over there," Siwoo continued. "Honestly, in this test, you need enough luck and a good teammate." He paused as he asked, "Yu-sung, who did you get paired with?" Yu-sung read out the name, Hanajima. The system panel appeared. Team 24, Hanajima Sumire, Shin Yu-sung. On Sumire's side, her face was flushed red, looking at the team assignment with disbelief. She stared at the name on the panel, then shouted. All the students were eating in the cafeteria. Some students were standing to order food. The student eating turned to the person next to him and said, "With this exam, surviving is more important than getting high scores." Everyone was excitedly discussing their teammates after the system arranged them. "So, your teammate ranked up?" "I just got lucky." Park Hee-chan, ranked first in Class C, student rank 52, with a face full of resentment said, "Shouldn't you listen to your superiors when we disagree?" Al Jerry, ranked first in Class D, student rank 57, retorted, "So you think disagreement is enough?" Yu-sung was drawn in by the excitement and peeked over. He scooped up a spoonful of food and said absent-mindedly, "Everyone seems excited about the exam." Siwoo, sitting opposite him, explained, "Because the exam is a measure to decide which class you'll be in. High-ranking classes come with many benefits, low-ranking ones." A short-haired girl walked over. She placed her tray next to Siwoo, saying, "Are terrible." Siwoo continued, "Exactly, very terrible." Renia, a first-year Class F student, student rank 83, winked at him. "Yu-sung, this is our first time meeting, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Renia." Yu-sung smiled gently and replied, "Hello, Renia." Suddenly, her eyes sparkled as she spoke excitedly. "Oh right. I have something to say." Renia's face flushed as she made a request. "If you could spare some time, please marry me." Yu-sung looked at her, confused and puzzled. Siwoo said helplessly, "Renia, Yu-sung doesn't understand that joke." Renia pouted, "I wasn't joking." Siwoo continued, "You don't need to eat with me just because we are teammates for the exam." She replied, "I'm not here to see you. I'm here to see Yi-sung. As if he knew Renya's intentions, Siwoo said, "You're curious about who his teammate is, right?" She stuck her tongue out mischievously. "Is it that obvious?" Yi-sung was still eating calmly, listening to their conversation. Siwoo said mysteriously, "Hey, don't be too surprised when you find out." Yi-sung's team assignment appeared, Team 24, Hanajima Sumire, Shin Yi-sung. Seeing that name, Renia covered her mouth in shock. Sumire? Siwoo glanced at her. Right reaction. Yi-sung was confused by their reaction. Why is everyone so surprised? He scratched his face and stammered, "Because, Sumire is a bit, Siwoo's eyes narrowed slightly. He said confusedly, "Even in Class F, she..." Renia put her hands together on the table, her face turning dark. She said in a low voice, "Of course, not everyone was initially distant with her." Sumire stood quietly in a corner, looking down. More accurately, everyone just thought Sumire was a shy girl who didn't raise her head and spoke softly. She said softly, "Hello, hello." Renia looked at Sumire in the class, including me. "We thought we would help her get used to the class," Renia continued. "On the first day Sumire transferred here, a male student rushed into the class. Strange rumors started to spread. Late at night, when all the students had gone home, a male student returned to the class to retrieve something he forgot. He was shocked when he saw the scene in front of him. When he witnessed, in front of him was Sumire acting strangely. Sumire was muttering weird incantations and writing scary scribbles in a notebook. Of course, he didn't see what she was writing, so it just stayed as a rumor. Then, 2 days later, someone saw her drop a handkerchief. He picked it up, and was horrified. The student did return it, but he quickly ran away. Looking at the handkerchief, he felt something was odd. His fingers slowly reached out. When he opened it, it was full of long hair. A mess when Sumire arrived. There are many other incidents, like how she suddenly transferred from Japan. She gave a scary smile, for sending the whole class to the hospital. Renia covered one side of her face. She spoke hesitantly, "I definitely don't believe those rumors. You know why?" Yi-sung seemed to shine. He smiled and asked, "Why?" She replied softly, "Unlike the dangerous rumors surrounding her." A skull appeared. "Sumire is actually extremely weak." Sumire's face turned pale. She shrieked loudly when she saw it. Renia said with disbelief, "I didn't even think she was that weak." Siwoo made a V sign with his fingers and said helplessly, "Even in Class F, it's a bit too much. So, don't expect much from her. From what I heard, she's the worst card of Class F in Japan, so there's no way to know for sure." Yi-sung chewed his food and softly replied, "I see." He thought, "It's good to know what happened, but I want to hear it directly from her." Without anyone noticing, Sumire suddenly appeared. "Sorry," she said softly. Renia and Siwoo were surprised to see her. Sumire bowed her head. Her voice was a whisper. "Because having someone like me as your teammate." She puffed out her cheeks and began to cry. "I'm sorry." Renia and Siwoo were shocked and their faces turned pale. They thought, she heard everything. Sumire looked at them and sobbed, "You're disappointed in me too, right? Having to team up with such a quiet, timid, weak girl. I know everyone avoids me. I can only summon one bone soldier. I know that I'm weaker than a level 1 monster, so no one needs me. I'm just a burden." Siwoo stood up, carrying his tray. I'm leaving now." Renia also jumped up in a panic. "It's time for me to feed my fish. I gotta go too." Sumire sniffled. She was bewildered looking at them, and they ran off. "See you later." A quiet space suddenly came, and finally Yi-sung spoke, "Would you like to go for a walk?" Sumire immediately agreed. "Okay." Sumire sat on a bench under a cherry blossom tree while he stood at the vending machine in the schoolyard. After he finished buying, he went to her. "Here, for you." She was flustered. "Thank you." Sumire took it and took a sip. She hesitated. I. She looked down and said quietly, "I know I'm weak, but..." Sumire looked at Yi-sung and shouted, Those rumors are false." She began to explain, "I stay late in class." Images of Sumire focused on writing in her notebook and muttering appeared. She continued, "Because I was writing in my expense book. I need to live frugally." Remembering when someone saw hair, she said, "And with the bundle of hair in the handkerchief, that was because of..." Sumire said softly, "Because of my trait." Yi-sung looked at her in confusion. "Your trait?" She reached up and touched a strand of her hair. "My trait is, I'm a necromancer, a special dark magic that allows me to summon corpses." Suddenly, Sumire stood up. Of course, she held up a hair she had plucked out. "Now, I can only use one skill," Sumire mumbled, "and I need a strand of hair to sacrifice." The hair on her hand glowed as she read an incantation. "Awake, you corpses buried deep beneath the earth." Sumire looked seriously at the hair. "Protect the witch according to the sacrificial contract. Reincarnation." The bright hair stood out against the grass. It slowly turned into a slimy mass. The slimy substance twisted. It created a monster with a strange appearance. Yusung paused, looking ahead thoughtfully. Sumire clasped her hands together and looked at the slimy mass beside her as it tried to stand up. Its face was like a scary skull. Holding the hair in her hand, Sumire recited the incantation, "Awake, you corpses buried deep beneath the earth." She looked seriously at the hair. "Protect the witch according to the sacrificial contract, reincarnation." The hair turned into a slimy mass that twisted. She stood next to it, watching the slime rise. A slimy skull face appeared. When it was complete, a skeleton stood there shyly. Sumire said nervously, "This skill has a problem." Yusung wondered, "What problem?" She pointed and ordered it. "Sir, Bone Soldier, attack that rock." "Oh, I mean that tree." Upon receiving the order, the skeleton's eyes narrowed. Its skeletal hand clenched into a fist as it looked at the tree. Its hand punched the tree trunk, punching it repeatedly. The skeleton's knuckles gradually cracked. Sumire covered her face, helplessly watching it fall apart. I knew it. Yusung thought, a summoning skill that uses hair as a sacrifice. As if he realized something, his eyes lit up as he thought, after transferring to the new academy, she's become much weaker. Then, Yusung suddenly spoke, "Ah, right. Sumire?" Sumire startled. What?" He looked directly at her and asked, "You don't have friends, do you?" She hesitated. "Well, I. Sumire looked down. She whimpered softly, both weak and scary, collecting people's hair all day long. Yusung put his hand on his lips, lost in thought. She must have taken hair from the students in Japan, but after leaving Japan to come to Korea, all the relationships that helped Sumire get stronger are gone. Then, he looked at her again. She must have a hard time asking for hair, especially from strong students. Yusung called out, "Sumire." Sumire was startled. Yes. He plucked a strand of his hair and gave it to her. "Here." She couldn't believe that he had done that. She asked hesitantly, "Are you sure? Not everyone can be used for sacrifice." Yusung smiled at her. "I'm okay." Sumire looked at his hair. He continued, "This is how your skill works, right?" Her face became emotional. Sumire and Yusung looked ahead. She was dazed. A sturdy bone structure had formed, its hand clenched with strength, its eyes glowing as it looked ahead. She looked at the completed skeleton in front of her, then said, "Somehow, its eyes look brighter, even though it doesn't even have pupils." "Well then. Now," Sumire ordered, "Sir Bone Soldier, please attack that tree." It turned to look at the tree. Its eyes stared at the target. It ran quickly towards it. The skeleton's hand punched the tree trunk. The imprint of its hand appeared on the trunk. It looked at its clenching hand. Sumire was amazed. Yusung smiled faintly. A bright blue light started to emerge as its hand punched into the tree. A powerful magic enveloped the skeleton. She gasped and stammered, "No, it can't be." Sumire's eyes widened. She said with disbelief, "With my current ability, I can only use 30% of the original power." Yusung smirked. "That's enough." Sumire looked at him secretly while he was focused ahead. She thought, "Shin Yusung." Her face became brighter. Her eyes sparkled as she thought, "If I was with him." Sumire grabbed his hand. She yelled and pleaded, I'm sorry, but can I have 10 strands of your hair?" He leaned slightly when she pulled him. "That's a bit too much." Elsewhere, a dot appeared on the system panel. Byung-chul was carefully looking at every detail. The door of the room opened and a voice said, "This is Lim Xiao." He didn't look back, still looking at the system as he said, "I've been waiting for you. Is this your first time working as a supervisor?" Xiao walked closer to Byung-chul and said, "Yes, but I have prepared very well to avoid any mistakes." Hearing that, he turned to look at him and said, "You don't need to worry about anything. On this Emerald Island, there is only one dangerous individual." Xiao's face relaxed. He smiled slightly and said, "I have warned them many times, so the students won't dare approach that area." Byung-chul said coldly, "But of course, there was a case of a first-year student violating the rules. Even last year, there was only one case like that." Xiao immediately replied, "You must be talking about the current student council president." He smiled slightly. "So you know too," Xiao continued. "What student Shin Haiyun has done is shocking to Skyscraper Academy. Geniuses are often different." He saw that as a given, and replied, "Because she came from the Shin family." At that moment, the system displayed a red dot with the shape of a monster. Byung-chul continued, "Usually, only monsters can defeat monsters. It's a basic truth." The red dot shone brightly, standing out on the system. The luxurious cruise ship was sailing in the middle of the sea. Hortensia's hair flowed in the sea breeze. She stood enjoying the passing wind. Hortensia's eyes were half closed. She slightly opened her eyes when she heard a voice from afar. "What are you doing?" Yuna stood behind Hortensia with her arms crossed. "Kim Yuna, a first-year rank student, ranked second, smiled and asked, "What's with that serious face?" Hortensia didn't bother to answer and walked past her. Yuna felt a bit embarrassed and ran to grab her shoulder. "Hey, don't ignore me." She stretched out her arms to block her path. Yuna looked up at Hortensia with a flushed face, and said with a smirk, "Why not another fight? There's a perfect training room here." She stared at her. Hortensia said coldly, "It's only been 3 days." She pursed her lips, her face filled with resentment. Yuna was confused. What? She looked at her emotionless face. She raised her hand and created a small amount of magic. "Since you lost," she shouted resolutely, "this time, I will definitely win." "Just one fight," Hortensia said bluntly. "I refuse. Please." Yuna begged, "Just one match." She sighed, looking away and asked, "Why are you so clingy to me?" Her lips curled into a smile. "Maybe it's because I'm the kind of person who can't live with the word defeat." Hortensia and Yuna faced each other. A tense atmosphere surrounded them. She was surprised when she heard someone call his name, Yusung. Hortensia quickly turned around. Yuna was surprised to see her reaction. She glanced in the direction she was looking. On the other side was Yusung walking with his friends. Seeing him smile lightly with everyone, Yuna said softly, "He's the one who just transferred here." She looked at Hortensia with confusion. She seemed lost in her own world, quietly looking at him. Yuna said suspiciously, "That's strange. You've never cared about any transfer students before." She squinted her eyes, and asked doubtfully, "Is he worth your attention?" "Because he is a student of the Fist King, the person who defeated your grandfather. Am I right?" Hortensia glared at her. "It's none of your business." Yuna raised both hands, and half closed her eyes, saying implicitly, "Why? You don't know for sure." She walked to face her. Una smirked, and got her face close to Hortensia's as she taunted, "Who knows, maybe that rank 1 title will fall into someone else's hands." Hortensia ignored her. She didn't bother to answer and just walked away, making Yuna surprised. She suddenly stopped, turned her head back, and said, "Then you'll become rank 3. Hearing that, Una's face flushed with anger, and she shouted, "It's not over yet." She released her magic. Magic power surrounded Yuna. She was furious. Seeing that she couldn't provoke Hortensia, she retracted her magic. She pursed her lips. "Damn it, I'm so annoyed." Yuna glanced over to the other side. She saw the chaotic scene of Yusung's group. One was feeding pigeons, and another was holding their head in fear. Siwoo pointed to a strategic map. Overview of Emerald Island, practical strategies for the second quarter assessment, classification of monsters in Emerald Island's ecosystem, brief review of strategies for the assessment, useful tactics used by 6-star hunters. Everyone sat beneath the map, focused on him teaching and planning. "So, I'll begin my lecture on Emerald Island." "Yes sir. I've done a lot of research because of you, Yusung." Siwoo pointed to a picture of an island that looked like a fish. "First of all, Emerald Island is actually the body of a level 7 boss monster, the abyssal whale." The picture showed the monster opening its large mouth, attacking a ship. "It can swallow a huge cruise ship whole." He then pointed to the news report, but it was defeated by the legendary hunter, the Fist King. The abyssal whale was finally defeated. Top hunters around the world under the command of the Fist King defeated the abyssal whale. Renia put her chin on her hand and wondered, how did that whale become an island? Her question confused Siwoo. Suddenly, Sumire raised her hand and stood up, attracting everyone's attention. "That's because," she answered Renia's question, "because of the residual mana from the abyssal whale." Siwoo awkwardly agreed with Sumire's answer. That's right, because of the residual mana. Its corpse absorbed the nearby coral reefs and became a huge island. Just like I thought. He thought. Sumire is very good at theory. Siwoo clicked to the next image. He continued, because it used mana as a nutrient, many species were born. The image showed the emerald beetle, with a shiny gem on its back. It clung to the leaves. It clung tightly to the leaves in the middle of the forest. The image of an island appeared. He continued, an ecosystem was born. Numerous animals appeared with gems on their bodies. Siwoo explained, the reason it's called Emerald Island is. He pointed to the gem on its body. Every monster has a gem-like mineral on them. Yusung was drinking water as he said excitedly, that's interesting. Is it because the coral reefs reacted with the mana? Siwoo continued, there are many theories surrounding it, but whatever. He opened the panel, entered data and said seriously, the important thing is we have to collect those gems for this test. He displayed the scores. Rank 1 monsters are worth 1 point. Rank 2 monsters are worth 5 points. Rank 3 monsters are worth 30 points. Golems are worth 200 points. You can see the scores here. Renia's mouth dropped open. 200 points? That's insane. Siwoo looked at everyone below. The problem is that golems have never been defeated in any of the lower level exams. The crystal golem is a rank 3 boss. We don't even have a chance to fight it. Suddenly, He slammed his hand on the table and raised his voice. Our goal is to aim for the average score. Safety comes first. Level 1 and 2 monsters are enough. Everyone looked at him in awe as if he was a magician. Sumire was focused on writing. Renia stood up excitedly. Siwoo said, enough explanation. Let's go have some fun now. It's not often that F-rank students like us get to enjoy a luxurious cruise ship, he continued. This is the perfect opportunity to try delicious food. Yu-sung mentioned, making Sumire surprised. Food? Everyone was talking excitedly. Today's the chance to try some expensive food. Okay, let's end it here. Let's hurry before it gets too late. The Yu-sung group was enjoying a meal at the table. Siwoo praised the food. It's like it's melting in my mouth. Renia complimented. It's so good. Renia was lost in the flavors. This dumpling is so good. Sumire took a spoonful. This broth is amazing. He put a chicken leg in his mouth. It's okay, Sumire said in admiration. The meat is so tender, it melts in my mouth. Renia spoke while putting food in her mouth. I'm a bit full already. Sumire happily put her hands to her face. It's so delicious. Renia's face turned pale. I can't swallow anymore. Siwoo and Renia's faces turned dark. They said with difficulty, I've reached my limit. At night, all four of them were sitting on the rooftop, full. He leaned back and sighed. I ate too much. Renia, who was sitting next to him, agreed. Me too. I feel like throwing up. Yu-sung looked at them. It's so fun. It's so delicious. Sumire hesitantly asked, Yu-sung, you look so relaxed. You ate a lot too. Unable to take it anymore, Siwoo and Renia said in unison, okay, we're going to sleep now. See you tomorrow. I feel nauseous. See you tomorrow. He watched them and smiled. See you tomorrow. Sumire was surprised. She hesitated. Gee, goodbye. Suddenly, she secretly looked at him, and her face turned red. Yu-sung was still calmly enjoying the atmosphere. Sumire said hesitantly, Today felt a bit short. Hearing her words, he replied, That's right. This is a happiness that I never knew when I was on Mount Musen. They both looked up at the sky. She asked again, We're going to Emerald Island tomorrow, right? Sumire looked down and said thoughtfully, I don't want to be a burden. She looked at him and said in confusion, Sorry, I brought up something gloomy at the end of such a fun day. Yu-sung was still listening to Sumire silently. She said worriedly, It's like a bad habit. Whenever I'm happy or something good happens, I worry. I wonder if I'll make another mistake and ruin everything. She clenched the soda can in her hand. He said gently, It's okay. Sumire was surprised and looked up. What? Yu-sung looked at her gently and encouraged. You don't need to blame yourself. Everyone makes mistakes, it's natural. But I'll help you. We're teammates, right? Sumire was touched. Her eyes widened as she stared at him. She turned her face away and said softly, Yu-sung, you're so thoughtful. Sumire suddenly realized something. She said, But you don't seem like the kind of person who would make mistakes. Yu-sung retorted, Really? He thought thoughtfully. Mistakes. Scenes flooded his mind. Master, I caught it. Look behind you. His master's voice echoed in Yu-sung's mind. What are you doing? His hand was holding a mushroom skewer, and he turned to look at him, mouth drooling with saliva. Master, this mushroom is really delicious. His master immediately opened a book about mushrooms and told him, This is a poisonous mushroom. In the end, his master was sitting next to him, taking care of the feverish Yu-sung who was lying in a pile. His master turned to look at him. He spoke, Master, I'm ready. He was wearing countless items, and his thumb was up. His master, with a dark face, said helplessly, Yu-sung, the bag isn't supposed to be on your head. How did you use it before? Back in reality, Yu-sung smiled slightly, then said gently, Not at all. I make a lot of mistakes. Sumire was surprised. You? He said thoughtfully. Yeah. But, I have a master who always helps me fix my mistakes. His master's hand reached out to him. He's a very important person to me. His eyes slightly closed, lost in thought. Sumire suddenly spoke, making Yu-sung startled. I think I understand, she said brightly. I also have a precious family like that. Then she slumped and said, But, since I transferred here, I still haven't been able to see them. He looked at Sumire's appearance and said, You must miss your family a lot. Her mood returned to normal. She clenched her hands with determination. Sometimes this happens, but it's okay, because coming to Gaon was my choice, Sumire whispered, and I always carry their picture with me. She moved her lips slightly. Sumire asked shyly, Do you want to see it? She took out the picture and introduced each person. This is my mom and dad, and these are my little siblings. Sumire asked Yu-sung brightly, My siblings are cute, right? He smiled, agreeing. Yes, they are very cute. He suddenly became silent, but she was still happily telling him everything. Sagua is very funny, unlike me. Suddenly Yu-sung spoke, Sumire, I'm a bit curious. Sumire wondered, what is it? He asked her with confusion, why did you move to such a faraway place? Sumire was a bit hesitant at his question. Yu-sung continued, I don't believe those rumors about you hurting your classmates, but... She froze, her eyes widened. Sumire hesitated. Well, that's about. Yu-sung looked at her and was confused as she was speaking. That's about. Her hand clenched the piece of paper in her hand slightly. Yu-sung and Sumire sat on the deck, enjoying the wind and talking for a while. Suddenly, he asked her, why did you transfer to such a faraway place? Fearing she might misunderstand, he added, I don't believe those rumors about you hurting your classmates or anything, but, hearing his question, she was a bit surprised and froze. Ah. Her eyes widened, showing clear panic as she stammered, that's, what I mean is. He observed her slowly, waiting for her to explain her reason. What happened? Then, the scene in front of her gradually darkened. From the endless darkness, a hand suddenly stretched out. On it was a strange symbol that seemed to absorb the dark shadows around it. It turned out that the owner of that hand was Sumire. The surrounding scenery was a bit chaotic, mixed with indistinct sounds and voices, and she didn't know who they belonged to. Her eyes widened in fear as she looked at the symbol on her hand. Terrible and scary images with terrified faces appeared one after another, mixed with loud and chaotic voices. Then, the symbol on Sumire's hand emitted a bright light. Finally, although she didn't want to, her energy was out of control and exploded. This time, the scene changed to one that was all white. At first glance, there was only a beautiful and fragile vase displayed on the table. But on closer inspection, she saw that the table was covered in dirty marks. A voice filled with criticism rang out, it's all your fault. Sumire sat at the table, facing shadowy figures with different injuries. The short-haired woman with an unclear face, whose arm was injured, turned to her and said harshly, how embarrassing. Can't you see that all of us are injured because of you? Then, a man who was injured all over his body, and even had to use a walker to support himself, said, this happened because you collected too much hair. This time, a young man with a clear face appeared. He didn't say anything, he just put his hand on his sword and looked at her with a frown. Suddenly, the scene shifted to directly in front of her. Then, 2 rows of tears slowly fell. In the end, it was all because of greed. She asked herself in her memory, why didn't I realize it sooner? She covered her face and ran away from the table, leaving the chairs scattered. I ran away. Her painful memory slowly closed as she returned to reality. Then she heard him say, I'm sorry, Sumire. Yu-sung placed his large hand on her. His expression was gentle and he smiled lightly, comforting her. If you feel hurt, you don't have to say it. She was completely confused by his words. Then she said sadly, I'm sorry. He looked up at the night sky and spoke to her. It's okay, but it was also as if he was speaking to himself. All of us have at least one secret we don't want to reveal. Hearing his comfort, her eyes seemed to have thoughts. Then, she pursed her lips. You're indeed. Finally, like him, she looked up at the sky and smiled brightly. A good person. The scene of the two of them sitting under the moonlight became so poetic and romantic. The next day, as dawn broke over the ship docked. The island was surrounded by thick fog. In the sky, a flock of unidentified birds were flying around. Teacher Xiao stood on the deck, looking up at the island that was both mysterious and beautiful. Then, he said with relief, finally, we've arrived. Opposite him were strangely shaped stone towers with brilliant colors like crystal, creating a feeling that was both dangerous and tempting. Suddenly, hurried sounds and rushing footsteps came from the forest. A young man was panicking and running recklessly through the forest. Dangerous eyes appeared in front of him, lurking in the shadows and waiting for the opportunity to attack him. At this time, he had to run away from the danger that was chasing behind him, and also be wary of the enemies waiting in front. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and pursed his lips. Then, he shouted, help me. Then, he ran desperately through this forest full of deadly dangers. The first day of the test on Emerald Island officially began. The scene shifted to Sumire with a slightly confused look on her face, and in her hand was a handkerchief containing something inside. She seemed hesitant about whether to open it or not. While hesitant, she thought, this test, no matter what happens. Before that, Teacher Xiao had told his students, as you know, on Emerald Island, the monsters have different gem sizes depending on their rank. Then, he continued, and of course, the higher the rank, the higher the score. In his hand, he held a gem with a strange shape and color. If you put these gems in a bag, they'll be stored as points, he said excitedly. It's easy, right? Then, he said seriously, the rules are very simple. Then, he explained the rules. Within 2 days, collect as many gems as possible. Sumire stood below, listening very attentively. After the flashback ended, she thought, if I become a burden again. Suddenly, Yu-sung called her name. Sumire. She was startled and jumped. Yes. Yes. The path ahead branched into two different paths, so he spoke up. I think we should split up. Hearing this, she felt a bit tense but still agreed. Split up to find gems? I understand. He looked at her expression and understood. So he comforted her. You have my hair now, so you should be able to deal with the monsters below rank 3. He then took both of her hands. Then he smiled gently. Don't worry too much. Sumire stood there, surprised and blushing. Around him, a bright light suddenly appeared like a savior. You can do it, Sumire. She was speechless due to his light. Then he waved goodbye to her. See you later. Sumire was still in awe, standing as if she was frozen, and waving back. Okay. After Yu-sung had completely left, Sumire was left alone, following his path with her eyes. She regained her confidence and affirmed with full vigor, that's right, I can do it. She held the handkerchief containing his hair in her hand, thinking with complete ease, because I have a powerful weapon, right, Mr. Yu-sung's hair? The handkerchief lay obediently in her hand, waiting for her favor. Well then. Now, just one strand. Suddenly, something appeared in the forest behind her. It quickly charged from behind, heading straight for her. At this time, Sumire realized that something was charging towards her, so she turned around. Suddenly, her face was filled with horror when she saw it. In the end, only her scream echoed throughout the green forest. In the dense forest, an emerald-green snake-like monster was slowly crawling on a tree. Suddenly, an arrow pierced through it, killing it. The one who shot the arrow was Siwoo. 1 point. Then he drew another arrow, facing Renia, and said, We are surrounded, be careful. Around them were scattered corpses of monsters. She responded to his warning, Leave it to me. His eyes activated his clairvoyant skill as he drew his bow, preparing to shoot. This is a forest. Don't use your skills too much. Use it sparingly. Hearing his advice, she smiled confidently. Of course. She then continued, Siwoo, you keep searching for prey using your clairvoyance. With his ability, he could sense the direction of monsters without even looking, and told her, a deer at 3 o'clock. You can handle it. As soon as Renia saw the monster, she replied, Got it. She then used her power to create a powerful fire that incinerated the deer monster. After defeating the monster, she turned to him and exclaimed, I would have died if you were any slower. Warn me sooner. Siwoo, on the contrary, was still very calm, as if nothing had happened, and reminded her, It's not over yet, focus. Immediately after, a huge boar-like monster charged straight towards them. Renia yelled in panic, Look at the size of this thing. Siwoo released an arrow at the monster, but it went off course. He panicked. It missed. As expected, the bow is still too much for me. Then, the monster aggressively struck him, causing the system to ring. Shield remaining 60%. Being attacked directly like that unexpectedly made him grit his teeth in pain. Then he bit his teeth, pulled out a dagger and stabbed it directly through the monster's head. Renia ran over from afar, calling out worriedly, Siwoo. After defeating the monster, he put away his bow with a sigh. Looking at the dagger in his hand, stabbed into the monster, he exhaled and said, I'm not used to using a bow anyway. Renia stood beside him, worried about him, asking, Are you hurt anywhere? Are you okay? He pushed the large body of the monster away and said tiredly, I'm fine. The shield was hit. He put the dagger away and thought, in the end, I ended up getting help like back then. His expression was very complicated. I hate having to admit it. She looked at his tired face and suggested, Should we rest for a bit? He sighed helplessly, Tomorrow, I'll probably be sore. He then agreed, Yeah, we should let the shield recover too, Renia reassured him. I'll prepare everything, so just keep resting. Siwoo then smiled gratefully. Yeah, thank you. After finishing everything, he lay down on the ground with a sigh. Then, he smiled with relief but also with a bit of helplessness. We were almost eliminated at the beginning there. Saying that, he looked up at the sky and remembered Yu-sung and Sumire. Speaking of which, I wonder how Yu-sung and Sumire are doing. When he saw the unmanned aerial vehicle high up, he said strangely, There's Yu-sung. The scene shifted to another place in the forest, where several figures were running frantically. 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, seemed to be running away from something very scary. A long-haired blonde guy said urgently, What kind of monster? Then he shouted angrily, Messing with the emerald elephant, huh? A long-haired girl with her eyes covered said to him, Leader, let's fight it directly. He refused immediately. Denied. Never. While running desperately, he added, A rank 3 monster is too much for us. It's no different than throwing ourselves into a death trap. Suddenly, all 4 of them stopped in surprise. Someone with slow steps said incredulously, This is. At the end of their path, there was a dead end. They all started to panic. They said together, We're doomed. This is so scary. Behind them, the elephant monster had finally caught up with them. Its eyes were ferocious as it roared angrily. The four of them faced it. Even though they knew they didn't have a chance, they had no other choice but to face it directly. They began to draw their weapons. There was no other choice. They charged toward the monster. This is it. The mysterious-looking blue-haired guy made the first move. Poison trap. When the monster was hit, its movement was slowed like it was walking through mud. Seeing this, he said, "Ready?" After he finished speaking, he yelled to his teammates behind him, "I'm counting on you all." The two girls in the team immediately charged at the monster. Okay. The girl with the long hair covering her eyes tossed the elephant high up into the air. Unique movement. Goblin toss. Then the girl with the ponytail also jumped up high. This should be high enough. She directly swung her hammer, finishing the monster off. Atomic annihilation. The long-haired girl, with a hint of expectation, said hesitantly, Did we defeat it?" The girl with the ponytail was carefully inspecting the monster. Then, she was suddenly shocked. Looking at the wound she had created on the monster, that barely even made a scratch, she panicked. "It's not." She didn't even have time to react when the monster immediately retaliated, making her fall down in fear. She held her hammer and ran back to her teammates, crying, "The attack didn't work." At this moment, the blonde-haired guy who was called the leader stepped up and said, "This is our last chance. Everyone, gather around me." His skill created a light shield that surrounded all four of them. Holy shield. But in the end, the monster broke the shield in one move, and it was still ineffective. All four of them lay scattered on the ground, unable to fight. The blonde guy said helplessly, "It's over." The long-haired girl could only stammer, "La leader." Then she slowly asked, "Is this the end for us?" He just responded lightly, "Yeah, that's right." In this life-or-death moment, the girl finally spoke out. To be honest, he only reluctantly reminded her, "Rika, when we get to the hospital, we'll have a lot of time. We can talk then." Suddenly, a figure with a ponytail lightly rushed past them. Just as the monster was about to reach them, Yu Sung appeared heroically in front of them and faced the monster. His eyes flashed with sharpness. "I see it." The blonde guy and the girl named Rika were stunned, not knowing who he was. A medic? Just as the monster was about to touch him, he gathered his strength and punched it straight in the face. The monster was so easily defeated, making the two of them freeze. The emerald elephant. In one hit? Then, he turned to them and smiled brightly. "I'm taking it, okay?" Both of them were shocked. He's the rumored transfer student. They couldn't believe he could defeat a level 3 emerald elephant so easily. Very smooth. After collecting the points from the monster, he smiled lightly, and remembered her. "I wonder how Sumire is doing." On this side, Sumire was trying to get the handkerchief back from a small green monster's mouth. Stop it. You can't eat that." She forced a smile, pretending to be gentle as she coaxed it. Good boy, good boy." The small monster looked at her for a while. Then it used its long, fluffy tail to whip her hard in the face. After being whipped, she covered her face and lamented, "How will I get it back now?" But she couldn't help but exclaim, "It's so soft." The small monster kept growling menacingly at her. Seeing this, she could only pick up a small flower beside her. Well then. She then held out the white flower in front of it and asked through tears, "Do you want to trade the handkerchief for this clover?" She wanted to use the wildflower to trade for the handkerchief from the monster. Carbuncles are herbivores. So, the monster approached the flower and sniffed it a few times. Then it became annoyed and roared, scaring her. "You don't like this smell?" It just got angry after smelling it. She burst into tears and said in distress, What should I do now? I don't have the sweets that a carbuncle likes." Suddenly, an idea came to her. "I've got it." The small monster looked at her in confusion, not knowing what she was doing. Sumire took a flat rock and used it as a cutting board. "I'll take a cutting board." Then she held another rock that resembled a pestle and crushed the wildflowers and clover. Then, from somewhere, she took out a bottle of honey and poured it all over it. The small monster watched her process of making food for it with fascination. Roll them into a carrot. Finally, the meal was complete. Done. She held up her masterpiece and said proudly, "Delicious and nutritious, special carbuncle carrots." Then she turned to the small monster and asked, "What do you think?" The small monster was immediately attracted by the appearance and smell of the strange dish. Success. She held the food in front of it and asked slyly, "Ready?" Then she threw the food far away to distract it. "Go." The small monster was immediately lured and ran after it. At this time, she sighed and exclaimed, "Thank goodness." She finally got back the handkerchief containing Yu Sung's hair. "I got the hair back." Then she looked at the small monster enjoying its delicious food next to her. Her eyes became sharp and she took out a strand of hair, transferring power into it. A pink light flashed behind the monster. By the time the light died down, it still hadn't realized what was happening. Still enthusiastically enjoying its delicious meal. At this time, it realized something was wrong. Its face was angry and annoyed because it was being disturbed while eating. By the time it saw what she was doing, it panicked and screamed. She used her power to summon a terrifying skeleton and said, "I'm sorry in advance." Her eyes were sympathetic and watery as she apologized, "Sorry baby." Then she smiled gently and comforted it, "But the gem will grow back soon." The small monster was so scared by all of this that it stopped eating and drinking. Its eyes were filled with panic and tears. In the end, only its scream echoed throughout the mountains. The scene shifted from the dangerous Emerald Island to the live stream of Rose. One of her fans complained in the comments, "It's too late." She apologized to her fans sincerely, "Sorry everyone, just one more minute." Comments continuously appeared. "Doesn't she know Amy's time? She might be 10 minutes late." Finally, she started her broadcast. "All right, let's begin." She explained to them, "I just went to pick up my delivery." Then she introduced cutely, "Today's menu is, of course, the new burger from New Star Burger." Then she said with a sad expression, "And of course, I can't eat it because I'm a model." Her fans continuously sent comments. "What is she saying? She just confessed. Let's pretend to be deceived. The advertisers will be very happy." She announced to everyone who was watching the live stream, "Preparation complete. I'm turning on the camera." Suddenly, there was a glitch and she was unable to turn on her camera. "It's not turning on?" Comments expressing annoyance appeared continuously. "Not again. Is this what a big company is like? That's enough. Open the door. I can't take it." At this time, she finally appeared in front of the camera and greeted everyone. "Hello everyone." The comment section immediately exploded. "It's Amy. She's here. The new late record. There's no one else here, right? Isn't she supposed to be taking the exam? Look at the number of viewers." The chat window is about to explode. She winked at the camera and said cutely, "First, let's wink for the thumbnail. Sorry for being late, but we have a big event today. Please forgive me." She was Amy Rose of Class A, first year, ranked 27th. She glanced at the number of viewers and said, "Of course, I've prepared everything for this live stream." The number of viewers kept increasing rapidly. Currently there are 133,522 viewers. Great. The number of viewers just keeps increasing. Then she opened the ranking list. "Well then, let's take a look at the rankings with me." The first person to appear was Adela Hortensia. She had platinum blonde hair and was currently ranked first. Rose scratched her face shyly. "First place is Adela. As long as she's here, the first place will never fall into anyone else's hands. Her trait is also a rare type of ice." She remembered the time they had met. "I know her abilities because I was attacked by it before. The only unbeatable person among the 7 stars, the strongest student of Gown Academy." Then she suddenly added, "No, that's still not enough to describe Adela Hortensia." She was being very honest as she talked about her strength and potential. She has the most potential out of all hunters in the world. Next was Kim Yuna, who held the second rank. "And the second rank is my class president in Class A, Kim Yuna." She introduced Yuna's abilities. Una's trait is terrifying lightning, low accuracy, but huge destructive power. After releasing a powerful thunderbolt, Yuna still had small electric currents hovering around her hands. Then, she waved to the guy wearing glasses and said, "You, take care of yourself." The guy wearing glasses listened obediently, just raising his glasses, and said, "Yes, of course I will." After saying that, he turned to the monster that she had just defeated, and exclaimed, "She is so strong." That was Park Soo-hyun from Class A, first year, ranked 7th. On the hard shell of the large and scary monster, there was a wound that was created by Una. The third person to appear on the list was Yu Sung, and rank 3 is. Rose was surprised by his appearance, Shin Yusung. A new face at rank 3 even though he just transferred here. Unbelievable. Then she excitedly continued to exclaim, "An F rank standing at rank 3. No one could have ever expected that." The viewers, after hearing her words, were shocked. "An F rank trait at rank 3? Maybe there's an error in the calculation. That's never happened before." She switched the camera to him, wanting to see how he fought. "Let's see." Seeing him charge straight at the large monster in front of him, she was shocked. He's going to fight a level 3 monster alone? That's too dangerous. Then, his figure on camera jumped lightly into the air. Then he punched the monster in the head, directly defeating it. That's absurd. She was shocked by what she saw. "He's really F rank." She said in disbelief, "He defeated a rank 3 monster with stun immunity so easily." After she finished speaking, she said slowly with an expectant look, and more importantly, his image on the camera slowly smiled. Looking at his beautiful face, she couldn't help but compliment him. "He's so handsome." She was eating a French fry as she thought, "He has a lot of potential to become a star. I have to consider him very carefully." Then she smiled and chewed happily and concluded, "I have to meet him once. It'd be better if I could get him on my live stream for the content, of course." This time, she was shocked again as she scrolled down to the 4th person. "She's really ranked 4th? The appearance of the person ranked 4th gradually appeared. "No way. It was Sumire. Sumire? Some of the people watching the live stream didn't know what was happening and asked, "Why are you all so surprised? Who's Sumire?" Rose explained, "Hanajima Sumire. From Class F, she came from Japan, but her ranking is always very low." After speaking, she continued, "I heard that in Japan she was an outstanding student. It's not clear, but maybe it's because she couldn't adapt, her scores kept getting worse." She suspiciously switched the camera to Sumire, but she suddenly ranked 4th. Sumire appeared on the screen, but was actually leisurely cooking. She's cooking? She was even comfortably humming and singing. Seeing this, Rose collapsed in her thoughts. What is going on? She asked in disbelief, is someone earning points for her? On the other side, Sumire was relaxed, happily cooking a pot of curry. She was adding seasoning, and smiling happily and cutely. The curry is so good. After saying that, she exclaimed, it was so dangerous before. Luckily, special carrots are effective against carbuncles. She was lost in thought, not noticing that the curry was about to overflow, so she yelled in a panic, "The curry is overflowing." Then she was happy again, thinking about Yusung. It's better if I prepare quickly because Yusung will be coming here soon. At this moment, she remembered something. I wonder if Yusung's bone soldier is okay. Before, she had told the bone soldier, "Get me lots of gems." She was thinking that as she was exclaiming silently, "The speed is incredible. Just like Yusung." Then she continued to think, but, since it is affected by the mana of the summoner. On this side, the bone soldier that she had summoned was relentlessly defeating monsters and collecting points for her. While she was worried about the bone soldier, "I don't expect much from my score. I hope it can return safely." The bone soldier had already collected a bag full of gems for her. At the end of the day, Yusung and Sumire finally reunited. They sat opposite each other, looking at each other intently. Beside them was a large pot of curry and boxes of food. They took out their lunchboxes and poured the curry into them. The curry sauce shimmered beautifully and the scent was delicious and tempting. Then they picked up each meatball. Now, after saying that, Sumire said with passion, "Adding the most important ingredient is the final step." She carefully placed each meatball into the dish and decorated it beautifully. When she was done, she gave it to him. "Here, take it." Her eyes were extremely determined. "Curry, cooked by me." Yusung took the full plate of curry from her and smiled, thanking her. She smiled joyfully. "Enjoy." He scooped up his first spoonful of curry and looked at it with anticipation. Then, he slowly put it in his mouth. Sumire sat on the side, anxiously waiting for his review. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he frowned as if he was uncomfortable. The flavors immediately exploded in his mouth. Then, he slowly tasted each flavor. The natural sweetness of onions, the soft texture of the cooked potatoes and carrots, the aroma of turmeric, and the savory taste of the marinated meat. This time, he scooped up a meatball. He bit into it and immediately felt a sense of taste bud transcendence. The spicy and hot taste didn't overwhelm the original flavor of the chicken, but rather made it more special. It was like the last piece finally found its place. His expression was very complicated as he looked at the meat. He thought deeply, this fried chicken, it exists for the curry. Then he asked himself, is this the real taste of curry? Then he suddenly remembered his master. It's completely different from the curry my master made. He remembered that his master had made curry for him before. Today, we will make curry. At that time, he was very excited and stuck out his tongue, looking forward to it. But, remembering the curry his master had made, his face suddenly darkened. Sumire, seeing him remain silent for a long time, became a little worried. I hope he likes it. Then, he spoke. Sumire. She jumped and replied, The plate of curry had already been completely wiped clean. He even wanted to eat more, so he requested more. Seeing that he liked the food she cooked, she was very touched. Then she smiled brightly and happily agreed. Of course. Suddenly, the system appeared, attracting both of their attention. The system appeared to announce the midterm exam scores. The person ranked first was none other than Adela. Then, the second was Kim Una. And the person ranked third was Yasung. Siwoo and Renia, seeing these results, also showed surprised expressions. Then he turned to her and said, I knew it. She happily gave him a thumbs up. You guessed it right. Next up was the fourth rank. That turned out to be Sumire. The two of them were immediately shocked. On this side, after hearing the results of her being ranked fourth, she was shocked for a few seconds. Her curry hadn't even been added to her rice yet, and it was spilled. She finally reacted and yelled in surprise. The scene shifted to the inside of the city, full of bright neon lights and towering skyscrapers. The headquarters of the Korean Hunter Association was built in this metro city. In the headquarters, a pair of red high heels appeared. The woman wearing a sexy red changsam was named Mei Lin. She was the branch manager of the academy. She walked to a door and stopped, raising her hand to knock. The person inside said, "Come in." She immediately opened the door and bowed respectfully to the person inside. "Excuse me." Then she took out a tablet and said, "So, I will start with." Her eyes slowly shifted to the large screen opposite her. This quarter's results at the academy. There was a man with silver hair holding a remote control, controlling the large screen in front of him. On the screen, the students were arguing loudly about the ranking results. Rank 3? How is that possible? Is she cheating? One student encouraged their teammate, saying, "It's just the beginning." His teammate wholeheartedly agreed, "That's right, it's not over yet." Lin looked up at the screen, hesitating. Gown Academy. The voices of the students on the screen continued to ring out, "We have to get points." Then she said calmly, "I didn't expect the principal to be supervising the students. It's rare." The person sitting in the chair, who was called the principal, smiled and said, "I'm curious about someone." On the screen appeared an image of Yusung. "That student is the disciple of the Fist King." She was silent for a moment and said with some surprise, "It's rare for you to be curious about an F-rank student like this." He immediately interrupted her. "He's currently ranked 3rd. She stared intently at the screen, saying knowingly, "Remarkable achievement for an F-rank." He immediately told her what he was thinking. "The ranking for traits, it is a useful metric, up to a certain point," he continued, "but to overcome our obstacles." Hearing his words, she seemed to understand his intentions and probed, "Are you saying that student Shin Yusung is even more talented than the legendary hunter?" He rubbed his chin and said, "It's just an old man's speculation." Then, he smiled slyly and continued, "But," his eyes flashed a blue light, "I can see something inside him. Something we have been waiting for." He looked evil and cunning as he laughed. On this side, Sumire was wiping the plates as she sighed contently. She was so happy, not knowing if it was a dream. "Am I dreaming?" While she was lost in happiness, rank 4. He spoke, interrupting her thoughts. "It's not enough." He picked up the banana milk and said to her, "It's separated from the actual ranking of the class." He looked at her seriously and said, "For Sumire and me, who just transferred to become one of the 7 stars." Then he reminded her, "We have to get more points. It's going to be a difficult journey." Hearing him, she couldn't speak. "The 7 stars." Then he continued, "Maybe that's my arrogance, but," his eyes were very gentle as he smiled calmly, "I believe I can do it with you, Sumire." Hearing his words, she immediately stopped wiping the plates. She was about to cry. As she looked at him lovingly, she was teary-eyed, and said very sincerely, "I don't know how much I can help, but I'll do my best." Seeing her like this, he was only able to comfort her helplessly. "Don't cry." Suddenly, 2 strange figures appeared from the bushes opposite them. One of them smiled slyly and said eerily, "Finally, we found them." The 2 figures hiding were Victor and his teammate. "Today is our lucky day." A group of 4 people were clinking their glasses and congratulating themselves under the starry night. "Congratulations." One of them said, "Everyone did great. Let's gather everything we've earned." Another one said, "They laid out all the beautiful, shiny gems, representing their hard work after a tiring day." All 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women, huddled together happily, their eyes sparkling with pride. "So much." The blonde-haired guy smirked, putting his arm around the shoulder of the short-haired girl, and said cheerfully, "With this, we can make it to the top." She also smiled. Working together was definitely the right decision. The braided girl started dreaming about the future. "We'll be able to move to a higher-ranking dorm when we get back." The short-haired guy, leaning his head, was also happily laughing. "I want to go back after this test is over." Suddenly, a boy appeared from afar, ending their thoughts. "So loud," he said sarcastically, surprising all 4 of them. "You dumb B-rankers, you should know what shame is." 2 figures, 1 male and 1 female, slowly appeared from the bushes. The red-eyed boy continued, "Moving as a group like this." The short-haired girl, a bit wary, asked, "What are you guys doing here?" He said nonchalantly, "Nothing." Then, he slowly raised his hand, pointing at their gems, and said casually, "I just want to take those gems." Seeing that he was aiming for the gems that they had worked so hard to earn, the 2 male students in the group started to get angry and shout, "What the heck are you saying? Those are our gems." "Yeah, those are our points." The red-eyed boy, seeing them continuously protesting, frowned in annoyance. "Don't even dream of taking them. Get lost." At this moment, he began to use his power, and said darkly, "How foolish." He exuded a dangerous and arrogant aura. "Looting is the right of the strong." Facing his words, "Don't tell me you guys are planning to fight us?" All 4 students immediately became tense from his pressure. Then the blonde-haired male student turned to the braided-haired girl and carefully instructed, "Jihan, take the gems and run as far away as you can." Hearing that, the girl named Jihan was surprised by his decision. "There are 4 of us here. You want to run?" "I won't." The blonde-haired student explained anxiously. No, we can't win. Victor is a ranker, even if he's just a class A student. Then he began to summon his weapon and said to her, we'll try to buy you as much time as possible, so take the gems and run. At this moment, the short-haired girl began to use her power and said, I don't like to be in pain. Next, the remaining guy in the group also smiled helplessly. We have no other choice but to protect our points. The girl named Jihyun immediately hid the pile of gems. Then her eyes turned red and she spoke to her teammates. All right everyone. She used her power to transform herself into an emerald rabbit, then said firmly, I'll run as far as I can. The red-eyed boy, having witnessed everything from the beginning, was extremely annoyed. Always making such stupid choices. Immediately, all three students charged at them. Shut up, the blonde-haired guy said truthfully. I've never liked you. He unfurled his large wings. Then, he began to use his power. Alright, I'll show you what you want. His teammate also began to use their moves. His face was hidden in the darkness, only revealing a blood-red eye, as he said coldly, the reason why I'm called the Glorious Knight. The forest was once again filled with life with the sound of screams. When it was time to announce the temporary scores at the end of the day, after finishing off the group of 4 students, he was holding the loot in his hands. Then he started to calculate the points, announcing the temporary scores. The 4 students, after losing consciousness, were captured by the 2 of them. They had quite a lot. At this time, the system began to announce the ranking, and the person in first place was Adela. The second was Kim Yuna. He was still not satisfied after taking all those points, but still, because it seemed like he wanted to challenge the 7 stars. Not enough to challenge the 7 stars. At this time, it was announced that the third was Shin Yu-sung. Hearing this result, both of them were immediately surprised. Returning to the present moment, he was still hiding in the bushes with his teammate, observing Yu-sung and Sumire from afar. He really is ranked third, and that little girl beside him is from Class F. He immediately eliminated Sumire from the list of potential threats. So I don't need to worry about that stupid girl. He then focused all of his attention on him. All I need to do is defeat the remaining one. The girl who was always chewing gum was a bit distracted by his appearance. He's so handsome. Victor, after identifying his target, smirked. I'm so lucky, he thought maliciously. On this side, Sumire, not knowing the danger that was lurking, was happily smiling. It's late, let's set up camp. Hearing her words, he didn't say much and agreed. Suddenly, he sensed something and quickly stood up. Sumire, confused, said, You? She looked at him attentively and asked, What's wrong? The sky was now covered with dark bats, which made her scream in fear. Seeing the dark bats surrounded by red energy surrounding them, she exclaimed, There are so many bats. While Yu-sung's eyes were very calm, showing no fear, Sumire was terrified by the bats' actions. There, by the time she realized, the bats had already surrounded the area, not leaving any gaps. They're surrounding us. A voice full of contempt rang out from the darkness. You're actually quite good for an F rank. Then he ordered, Give me the bag. Then Victor, with a confident smile on his face, appeared. And of course, he arrogantly said like a lord of darkness, You have no other choice. Yu-sung was very serious as he observed the situation, but he didn't reveal any fear. Only Sumire was terrified, her eyes wide and mouth agape, as she shouted, He's a point hunter. Hearing that, he was puzzled. A point hunter? She explained to him in a panic, a type of evil student, one who targets other students instead of monsters. He was pleased to hear their reaction, laughing. They're scared. Just like F-rank trash. Before he could laugh for too long, he unexpectedly heard Yu-sung say, Sorry, but... Sumire stood beside him, very worried and teary-eyed. He looked up at him, then said firmly, We don't have any points to share with you. Victor's teammate, hearing his answer, thought helplessly, This is bad. Victor's gonna go ballistic if a weakling. At this moment, the smile on his face disappeared. Then he started to rage with anger. Stubborn. He gritted his teeth and said, You F-rank trash. His hand began to move. I swear. Then he hid in the infinite darkness. I'll tear you apart with these claws. Only his evil voice echoed in the darkness. Before you even fall. The bats started to fly erratically, attacking them. Without any panic, Yu-sung calmly closed his eyes, beginning to sense his location. Victor, seeing him close his eyes, said mockingly with contempt, Are you crazy? Why are you closing your eyes? After speaking, he shouted in joy. That's right. In this thick darkness, you won't be able to see me. His speed was so fast that only a red streak was visible at each place he stepped. In this transformed state, I'm faster than the speed of light. He immediately approached Yu-sung from above, smiling cruelly. I'll blow off that arrogant head of yours first. His teammate, on the side, thought calmly, It's over. But unexpectedly, just as he was about to reach him, he suddenly got punched. He was in so much pain that he screamed. Without giving him any time to react, he focused his power on his fist, readying his stance, war god form. His eyes flashed a blue light, full of determination. Then, he aimed at his stomach and unleashed a punch. Heavenly Dragon Upper Fist. This move was called Heavenly Dragon Upper Fist, war god form. Its power was so tremendous that it shattered the bat cage that Victor used to trap them. Sumire, seeing all this on the side, was so shocked that her mouth dropped open. Victor's teammate who was chewing gum was also unexpectedly shocked. Her face turned pale from fear, sweat pouring down her face, and her whole body trembling. The scene switched to another place. From the projector, a bright light suddenly turned on. In the dark space, a flycam was flying high above. A group of people were camping below, active at night. Everyone was happily talking and laughing. In the distance, in front of a cave entrance, was Park Soo-hyun. He stopped wiping his glasses. Park Soo-hyun frowned in annoyance. Damn it. This plan failed from the start. He remembered when he went to Kim Yuna for help while she was sunbathing. What? You want me to help? Park Soo-hyun used sweet words to compliment her and coaxed her. Una, you are the strongest in the class. The number of members has already been decided. If you join us, I'll give you some of my points. He asked cautiously, could you? But he only received a scoff from Kim Una. She took off her sunglasses and looked directly at him. It was your plan to begin with. Kim Una, looking dark, moved closer. Furthermore, there are so many other people. Do you really need me? Park Soo-hyun was sweating as he stammered. What if there's a change? She turned her face away. I'm fine. I'm not interested. And, Kim Una glanced behind Park Soo-hyun. Even though it sounds reasonable, you are the one who is craving points. It seemed that she had hit a sore spot, because Park Soo-hyun darkened and his face fell. He forced a smile and stammered, what do you mean? Kim Una laughed mockingly. PFFFT. Acting dumb? If the test ends like this, you'll be eliminated from the 7 stars, right? Who will rise up to take your place? Park Soo-hyun stood motionless, not reacting. She turned to see that Park Soo-hyun hadn't reacted. He was as dark as charcoal, looking extremely bad. Kim Una teased him even more. You look so dissatisfied. Several sparks of electricity appeared around her. Or maybe. Kim Una looked at him with sharp eyes, a smirk on her face. You want to take my points? Suddenly, the bright sky turned dark and gloomy. Park Soo-hyun was sweating and was shocked. A second later, his expression changed immediately. He started laughing. No, on second thought, that's probably enough people. Kim Una said teasingly, is that so? She also let it go and didn't care much, waving her hand and requesting, before you leave, get me a drink, okay? Park Soo-hyun smiled and ran to get it. Yeah, okay. But inside, he was annoyed and angry, clenching his fists. Damn it. Back in the present, he was still wiping his glasses. Park Soo-hyun gritted his teeth, daring to insult me like that. He tried to calm his emotions and took a breath. Park Soo-hyun slowly opened his eyes, staring darkly ahead. He noticed the glasses that he was holding. But, I must admit that, Park Soo-hyun put on his glasses and turned to look into the cave. In this place, strength is absolute. He glanced behind. A loud voice rang out, calling for everyone to gather. A group of people looked in the direction of the voice. Everyone, pay attention. Park Soo-hyun said loudly, from now on, I will tell you what we're going to do next. He ordered, the command group will check the head count and equipment before beginning the raid. Of course, no need to worry or be scared. Park Soo-hyun confidently clenched his fist, encouraging everyone, if it's us, Class A, we'll definitely do well. He closed his eyes, thinking, now, that's right. Park Soo-hyun looked up. He looked at the huge, deep cave in front of him with determination. First is this place. The scene changed, revealing spiky rocks and the dark surroundings. The orange-haired girl woke up groggily. Where am I? She moved and turned her body to the side. I'm so dizzy. A growling sound could be heard. The orange-haired girl vaguely recognized this voice. Right in front of her was Victor, beaten up and deformed, to the point that she couldn't recognize him. Victor? She was tied up with him. The orange-haired girl was startled and screamed, monster. She remembered, I remember now. At that time, the orange-haired girl was shocked, sweating and motionless. No way. Victor lay motionless. He was barely alive, looking disfigured. With one move, she remembered Yu Sung's appearance, and wondered, is that guy really from Class F? At that time, she was kneeling on the ground, trying to run away. I can't fight a monster like that. When the orange-haired girl was about to run away. First, I must run. As she was about to run, she froze. Right in front of her was a large skeleton in the shadows. The skeleton's eyes glowed red as it stared directly at her. The orange-haired girl's face turned pale as tears fell. She fainted on the spot. The orange-haired girl remembered, and her face darkened. So, the skeleton that I saw. She imagined Sumire manipulating the skeleton with a scary and evil expression. It's her summon. The orange-haired girl calmed herself down. But, thinking about it, she slowly moved, trying to untie the ropes, thinking, the pink-haired girl has a skilled teammate, but she's still just a low-ranking F-rank student. The person who tied her was very careful, even tying her hands. The orange-haired girl felt a huge difference in power, thinking Sumire was weak. She became confident. If it was me, I can defeat her immediately. She had stood up and was thinking, that's right, now's my chance. The orange-haired girl used her power and broke the ropes that were tying her. She went to pick up the ropes Victor was tied with. The orange-haired girl looked at his battered and unconscious face. Victor. She darkly picked up the ropes and dragged him away. I need to retreat first. But, the orange-haired girl was frustrated. I'll definitely take revenge. Suddenly, something appeared in front of her, startling her. From the darkness, a white skeleton walked out. The skeleton raised its hand to stop her from going further. The skeleton stared at the orange-haired girl. She recognized a familiar voice that was now more arrogant. What? Is that you? The orange-haired girl smiled confidently. I was just surprised before. But now, I'm not scared of you anymore. She frowned angrily at the skeleton. The orange-haired girl unleashed her power. As punishment for scaring me, she shouted as a series of light beams flew out. I'll tear you into pieces. The light beams flew past a crystal of smoke. A second later, it had been cut in half, showing that she was not simple. The light beams were like a fishing net, flying towards the skeleton. It was getting closer to the bone soldier. Suddenly, a white light appeared in its eye sockets. The bone soldier released its power, easily breaking her magic. The orange-haired girl froze. She had turned pale a long time ago. Suddenly, Sumire and Yusung, who were in the cave next to them, were startled by the noise. Sumire shouted, that sound came from inside the cave. Both of them looked out carefully, prepared to face the culprit. You, the culprit, quickly surrender. Sumire was surprised. She saw the skeleton carrying the unconscious orange-haired girl, and was approaching them. Bone soldier. She looked at Victor, not knowing if he was still alive. She was happy that both of her enemies were knocked out. You defeated her. That's amazing. Victor was lying on the ground, exhausted and miserable. I wish you would just kill me. The scene changed to another place. A textbook was shown. Someone was diligently studying. Park Soo-yeon, in his tent, was focused on his work. Suddenly, a voice came from outside. Could you come out for a moment, Soo-yeon? He asked. What's the matter? It was dark, making it difficult to see the other person's face. There's a problem outside. There's an intruder. Park Soo-yeon stopped writing. An intruder? He thought seriously. Only the members of our class know about this plan. Park Soo-yeon put the pen down and decided to stand up and leave the tent. Park Soo-yeon didn't waste time. Where are they? He quietly went outside to see the situation. Park Soo-yeon said softly, I heard 2 of our people were injured. I'm wondering who the intruder is. Those around him had different expressions. Some were worried while others were excited. He continued, I'm wondering who the intruders are. Park Soo-yeon glared ahead. Below, 2 unconscious people were lying on the ground. He recognized the familiar faces. So it's you. Sumire appeared cutely first. Then Yusung appeared, smiling. And finally, the bone soldier. All 3 of them were present. A transfer student. Park Soo-yeon, not at all surprised, said, coming here late at night, it means you know our plan, right? Yusung didn't deny it. Yeah. We had someone provide us with information. Behind him were the 2 battered losers. I won't ask who they are, because there's only one bat freak in this class A. He adjusted his glasses dangerously. So, what do you want? Park Soo-yeon slowly stepped forward. You know, we have the upper hand in numbers. He had 2 overly aggressive bodyguards beside him. But if you still want to fight, Sumire and the bone soldier also prepared to fight. 2 sides with a large difference in numbers were facing off. I hope you're not stupid enough to do that. Park Soo-yeon used his words and gaze to manipulate him. Yusung, without fear, looked directly into his eyes. Now he finally spoke. Park Soo-yeon waited silently. If needed, then I will fight. Yusung smiled lightly. But, what I want is... A second later, his smile wasn't gentle, but sly and a bit devilish. Priority to attack. Park Soo-yeon froze, hearing his condition. To let us attack the crystal cave first. He was sweating as he thought, did I hear wrong? 2 F ranks are trying to defeat a crystal golem? The blonde-haired girl, who had called him out before, was also shocked and sweating. Park Soo-yeon looked at his forces. I have to use all of Class A. The onlookers couldn't even imagine it, and everyone was sweating profusely. To sweep this crystal cave? He looked at Yusung's smiling face, thinking, is this guy really stupid? Suddenly, someone smirked. The guy behind Park Soo-yeon pointed at Yusung and his group, laughing. Did you guys hear that? 2 F ranks are trying to defeat the crystal golem. With that, others chimed in, even if he's the disciple of the Fist King. Isn't that too much? Their mocking remarks continued. That's absurd. Those guys don't know their place. Let's quickly defeat them and chase them out. Yu Sung's face was still smiling, but it seemed to darken. Park Soo-hyun spoke up. No. He was the most rational one there. Turning around, he said to them, if they want to die, then we don't need to stop them. Park Soo-hyun took a step back. He made way for them. Go on. The Yu Sung group didn't say anything. Park Soo-hyun let them enter. You can go inside the cave. As the Yu Sung group entered the cave, he turned back to look at them. Suddenly, someone beside him asked, are you sure, Soo-hyun? The blonde-haired girl from before approached worriedly. What if they really succeed? After all, he is the disciple of the Fist King. Park Soo-hyun said dismissively, let them be. They're stupid for overestimating themselves. He looked towards the cave, his hand clearly grasping all information about his opponents. He may be the disciple of the Fist King, but the difference in natural talent is inevitable. The girl didn't say anything more. Okay. Park Soo-hyun stared at his smiling expression. He'll learn, he said self-satisfiedly with a compassionate face. The difference between those who have talent and... Park Soo-hyun remembered how he had been trampled down and despised by people with talent, the despair of not being able to overcome despite trying his hardest. After saying that, he turned and left, ending the matter. That's settled. I'm going back now. The blonde-haired girl waved goodbye. Thank you. Park Soo-hyun left, walking away and saying, it's time to end what I'm writing. The scene shifted to the inside of the cave as the Yu Sung group's footsteps echoed. Inside, there were countless shining quartz crystals. Sumire, amazed, looked with sparkling eyes. She followed Yu Sung, who was leading the way. The information is accurate. There are a lot of them here. He interrupted to explain more. This is their last resort to catch up to the 7 stars. The good thing is that we don't have to fight them here. Sumire understood. Okay. Yu Sung advised them. It's best not to waste our strength, Sumire said sadly, but no one is trying to stop us. She remembered the mocking expressions from before. It's clearly because, Sumire asked sadly, it's clearly because we're both F-rank, right? Yu Sung called her name. Sumire. Sumire, being called by her name like that, was startled and confused. Yu Sung rushed towards her. Sumire, confused, was confused. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion ahead. Yu Sung shielded Sumire. Looking back at the explosion, that was close. She was being held in his arms, her face flushed, her head full of question marks. He reminded her sternly, focus. In front of them was a huge crystal. This thing. Suddenly, the crystal opened its eyes and emitted a red light. It seemed to be the giant crystal golem that they had been talking about. It won't be easy to defeat. The scene changed to a series of large screens appearing. A woman appeared, standing in front of the large screens. She had short black hair and was watching the screen intently. On the large screens, every action of the students was being monitored. There was Park Soo-hyun adjusting his glasses, images of the Yu Sung group entering the cave, and then finally, everyone dispersing to their respective camps. She paused for a moment and asked, those 2 kids are Shin Ye-sung and Sumire? Lin Xiao, standing behind her, was sweating. Only the 2 of them entered? The screen clearly showed that the place was where a super dangerous monster was, but that place was... The short black-haired girl stirred her drink. It seems like you have heard of it before, she calmly said while stirring her drink. The thing at the center of the cave. Lin Xiao turned to her, puzzled. Isn't it a boss monster with an estimated danger level of 4? The short black-haired girl replied, that's right. He frowned, feeling helpless with the students. Why? I've emphasized the level of danger many times. Lin Xiao gave an urgent order. Order them to stop immediately. The short black-haired girl calmly took a sip of her coffee. I can't do that. He turned to her in a panic. Why? It's too dangerous. She downed the entire glass of water. The woman smiled lightly and said, of course, it's dangerous. She placed the glass down hard, then looked at the screen, and that's the meaning of becoming a hunter. The woman, serious and solemn, continued. It seems you are mistaken, she said resolutely. This test is a giant filter. A student who doesn't have enough ability to face society and themselves will immediately fail. Lin Xiao still felt it was too dangerous, but, he frowned, thinking, that's why I warned them before. Lin Xiao looked at the dignified woman before him. She showed no emotion, only coldness and compliance, because in the end, it's still the student's decision during the test. The scene changed to the giant golem monster. Yu Sung stood up and patted Sumire on the shoulder. I have a request. She didn't understand much, but she would definitely do it. Ah, okay. Yu Sung glanced at her, then told her the most important and necessary task for her now. From now on, just focus on providing mana for the bone soldier. Sumire, lacking confidence, was afraid something big would happen. Then, my control will weaken, and the bone soldier might do something unexpected. The bone soldier spoke. Just trust him. Both the bone soldier and Yu Sung were confident. He comforted and encouraged Sumire. If I, the bone soldier, and Sumire don't trust each other, then we can't be allies. She was a bit hesitant. Sumire pursed her lips. She made a decision and yelled, "Bone soldier, just use all the mana you can." Both Yu Sung and the bone soldier confidently charged forward. The two sides finally clashed. The monster roared loudly, threatening them. Sumire sat behind them, supporting them while anxiously looking at the bone soldier. She thought, the duration of the monolink is 10 minutes. Can they end the battle within this time? The golem raised its hand. The hand, with its powerful control, charged toward them. Sumire was shocked and surprised. An attack from the front? She shouted the order. The bone soldier's eyes lit up, signaling that it received the order. Bone soldier, block it now. The place where the monster struck created a blinding, bright light. Sumire reflexively covered her face. She slowly opened her eyes, and was amazed. The wind pressure is so strong. Sumire's eyes widened in surprise. The monster stood still, looking at the result. A second later, it was shocked and froze for a moment. With just one bone fist, the bone soldier had blocked the attack. The bone soldier glared at it. He raised his fist that blocked the attack, looking extremely cool. Yu Sung glanced over and smiled. The bone soldier switched hands, raising its fist. It punched, and the green thing from before exploded, leaving no trace. Yu Sung also began to attack. He didn't forget to compliment her. Good job, Sumire. It feels like there are two of you. The golem was still dumbfounded, not understanding what was happening. After a while, it understood and roared angrily. It charged forward, unleashing a move aimed straight at the bone soldier. Sumire was determined as she encouraged herself. We can do it, she yelled, encouraging the bone soldier. Surprised, his eyes widened. Bone soldier, hold on for a moment. The golem's energy was getting closer. The bone soldier just waved his hand, easily creating a barrier, deflecting those attacks. Sumire was shocked. The bone soldier used a skill that I've never seen before. He was trying his best, as he was gradually being pushed back. The bone soldier thought in surprise, is it Yu Sung's power? The golem attacked relentlessly. The red light in its eyes flashed. He was still holding his hand up, trying his best to defend. Yu Sung was running below, dodging attacks, waiting for an opportunity. Sumire clenched her hands. She shouted, signaling, Yu Sung. Now. He took a leap, high up, where he could see the entire scene. Yu Sung smiled, complimenting her. Good job, Sumire. He focused his power and unleashed a fist, charging straight down. That's enough. He aimed for the back of the golem's neck. He was getting closer and closer. It seemed to sense something, and turned around, but it was too late. Yu Sung struck hard at its weakness, the back of its neck. A light flashed with tremendous power. War God form. Shattering heaven punch. The golem was gradually cracking as it screamed miserably. The cracks spread out and down. Its scream became weaker and weaker and its eyes turned green. The golem stopped moving. It was slowly collapsing. Sumire looked, not believing the truth before her eyes. She was shocked, her mouth agape, immobile for a few seconds. We did it. The super strong monster fell with a thud. Sumire happily ran over to the two of them. You two did great. She approached and asked, Bone soldier. The bone soldier gave her a thumbs up. Sumire was touched, her eyes watery. Bone soldier. The two people below were talking happily. Yu Sung, who was standing above, frowned. It seemed like he had seen something about to happen. Yu Sung reminded everyone, Sumire, it's still too early to celebrate. The bone soldier was wiping the tears from her face. They both looked up at him. Yu Sung said darkly, it's not over yet. The sound of someone's footsteps appeared. It seemed like there was another boss. It's not over. Yu Sung looked deep into the cave. It's not over yet. Sumire was sweating, nervous. Still not? She was stunned for a moment. Sumire turned around and looked at the ground. This is. The space inside began to shake and move. She guessed, earthquake? Yu Sung spoke up and explained as Sumire, sweating, looked around. What happened before was just a passing ritual. His face became serious. The real battle. At the same time as he spoke, the monster appeared with a red glow. It began to walk outside. Not just one, but countless golems began to appear all around. Sumire was terrified. Why Yu Sung? There are so many golems. We. Sumire screamed. We're doomed. The golems were now right in front of them. Yu Sung thought. They appeared faster than I thought. He glanced at the bone soldier who had just finished fighting. During the last battle, The bone soldier accumulated a lot of damage. It's not easy to fight head-on right now. Then, he turned to look at Sumire, who was covering her face in panic. Moreover, fighting head-on will also put Sumire in danger. In his mind, Yu-sung thought of various scenarios. Once we're surrounded, there will definitely be casualties. He thought of the best way to deal with them. We must turn our backs to the wall and face them directly when they charge. Yu-sung closed his eyes with determination. I will break through here. He turned his back around. Yu-sung ordered, Sumire, let the bone soldier protect you. I'll defeat the golems here first. She asked anxiously, but what about after that, Yu-sung? He stood in front of her, clenching his fists. I know, but a hunter must make the best choice, even in the worst situation. There, in the distance, several pairs of eyes were looking down, watching them. My teammates are the ones who believe in that choice. Yu-sung said softly, just trust me. After saying that, he took a stance. Yu-sung ran forward at top speed, leaving Sumire and the bone soldier behind. She was surprised, looking at everything before her, unable to say a word. He moved so fast that no one could see him. Only the wind passed by. Yu-sung had already approached the golems, and they were unaware. They were still standing in place. Suddenly, Yu-sung jumped high into the air from the ground, charging straight at one of them. His face turned dark as he used his move, War God form. A series of powerful punches did damage. The golem was broken into pieces in an instant. Rampaging dragon barrage. Finally, Yu-sung punched hard in the middle as a finisher. The monster's head was blown off after only a few short seconds. It lost balance and fell backward. Yu-sung looked at it sharply. 1. He stepped on the falling golem and continued to leap. The next target was the golem next to it, and it was still the same powerful punches. The ending was the same. Both had their heads blown off and fell at lightning speed. 2. It was the same for the next one. It couldn't escape, but it was even more gruesome, as a large hole was punched into its body. Yu-sung said softly. And 3. The golems were now just their necks, with a green light slowly falling. Sumire's eyes widened, her mouth agape with shock. All in one move. She admired Yu-sung, killing the monsters like a maniac. Amazing, amazing. He frowned, feeling something was off. Yu-sung thought as he looked at the golem that he had punched repeatedly. The golems that I decapitated are too easy. Suddenly, it got back up and its eyes glowed red. The monster charged straight at him. Yu-sung was shocked. It's not dead? No way. His eyes widened as he looked at it. Is the power source not in its head? Sumire raised her hand and yelled a warning. Yu-sung! Dangerous! Golem's behind you. Hearing that, Yu-sung immediately turned around. Just as the golem was attacking, it was right next to him. It slammed down, creating a loud sound. Sumire's face turned dark, and she yelled, Yu-sung! Unexpectedly, Yu-sung's voice rang out. Sorry, Sumire. He was still worried about others. I made you worry. She looked on in surprise, teary-eyed. I thought the power source was in their heads. Yu-sung easily dodged to the side, but I was too complacent. The golem continued to attack, emitting a light. Yu-sung looked at it, remembering his master's teachings. He tried to remember his master's words, golems. At that time, his master drew strange symbols on the floor and explained, are monsters that mainly move their bodies using a giant magic sphere on their head or chest? Yu-sung remembered his master's words. When fighting golems, most hunters don't attack their arms or legs. It's best to destroy the power source in their head or chest. At that time, his master also said, of course. His master concluded with one sentence, the easiest way is to break their arms and legs so they can't do anything, then take their power source. At that time, young Yu-sung was always admiring his master, his eyes sparkling. He wanted to become like him. I want to quickly become someone strong like master. Both master and student were happily talking in their wooden house. He talked about his dream. I want to quickly become like master. His master praised him. Good. But it's still too early. That was a peaceful and harmonious scene. His master had also added, Yu-sung, if the power source is not in their heads or chests, then how do you defeat them? Yu-sung didn't know and looked at his master. His master said sternly, remember this. At that time, his master drew on the floor, and he gave him more instructions. At that time, Yu-sung was very excited as he intently listened. The memory stopped at when his master finished the last line. Yu-sung opened his eyes and returned to reality. I remember now. He was rummaging around the fallen golems. Sumire ran over, extremely worried and asking, are you okay, Yu-sung? Yu-sung glanced behind. I'm fine. I remembered the secret of these golems. According to what he remembered, the golems here were nothing but illusions. Sumire was confused. Illusions? From afar, a faint light emitted. There must be a power source somewhere around here. Suddenly, there was a sound, and the fallen golems were starting to wake up. Yu-sung glanced in the direction of the sound. Sumire and the others were looking around, bewildered and clueless. In the distance, the pale blue light was now red. Yu-sung stared at it, thinking, that's it. At that place, a red light was emitting. The rocks were layered, like a throne. In the center was that light. Yu-sung was surprised and happy. I see it. On the screens, everyone watching had also witnessed everything. The woman smiled lightly. Good job, she said with interest. He found the trick to the crystal cave. Outside the cave, everything was shaking violently. The group of students camping nearby were startled. The ground is shaking. One student looked up toward the cave. This is. Park Soo-hyun stood in front of the cave entrance, sweating as he looked. Park Soo-hyun also knew some of what was going on inside the cave. It's definite. The crystal golem has awakened. He thought. The scouting team confirmed that there are 5 golems. It's almost impossible to overcome them. Park Soo-hyun gritted his teeth as he thought of the worst-case scenario. Could there be a path that we haven't found? He also tried to console himself. Maybe the situation is already bad. Behind him, some students were casually joking. Did the new student capture a golem? No way. The red-eyed girl beside him wanted to see how Yu Ha-jin was. Really? He still has that expression. I don't care. Park Soo-hyun adjusted his glasses, looking dark. He calmed everyone down. All right, everyone. Park Soo-hyun put his hand in his pocket and said slowly, there's no need to panic anymore. He glanced at the people below and smiled. Do you really think that an F-ranker can capture a golem? Park Soo-hyun felt it was too absurd. Are you guys scared? The students below looked at each other. They also found it a bit unreasonable and unbelievable. That does sound unreasonable. He must have run away, or was taken to the hospital. Park Soo-hyun tried to put things back in order. It's Class S and B who should be worried about that tremor. He ordered, while the scouting team is checking, Group A, please monitor the surrounding area. Park Soo-hyun assigned tasks to each group. Group B, check the hunter equipment. Everyone received their orders and dispersed to their tasks. He was wiping his glasses when someone suddenly ran up. He reported in a whisper, because the path is narrow. Park Soo-hyun's glasses gradually disappeared, so it could only let 2 people with the highest ranks go. It returned to its original form as water. Park Soo-hyun glanced and decided, I'll go. On this side, Yu-sung, who was inside the cave, ordered Sumire to back away. Sumire, retreat. She announced that she was ready. Okay. Yu-sung began his work. He focused, looking straight ahead. High concentration. His fist clenched tightly. Yu-sung gathered power, preparing. War god form. A blinding white light flashed. An extraordinary and terrifying power beam was released from Yu-sung. Rampaging Dragon Stonebreak. It quickly charged at the purple crystals. Both of them collided. It went through a layer of thick crystals. Yu-sung maintained his pose, not moving an inch. Smoke billowed around. Yu-sung stared intently ahead. His eyes widened in surprise. The system panel rang with a danger notification. Warning. High energy hazard. In front of Yu-sung was a warning sign, but in the distance, a red light was blinking. It was from the hole he had created when he broke through the crystals. It was slowly accumulating energy. At the same time, the system warned, detected an energy explosion from the front. Sumire noticed the warning panel. Warning. High energy hazard. The warning panels kept appearing continuously. Yu-sung, looking at the connecting watch on his hand, saw the warnings pile up. Detected an energy explosion from the front. Warning. High energy hazard. Warning. High energy hazard. He was sweating, his face darkening. Detected an energy explosion from the front. Yu-sung yelled an order to her. Sumire, lie down immediately. Sumire looked at him anxiously. Yu-sung. Yu-sung turned back urgently and shouted, hurry. Sumire saw it but still didn't move. She was confused, looking at him. The energy ball was about to be completed and was getting bigger. Now, a giant, blinding light was fired. It destroyed everything it passed, making everything around it disappear completely. It charged towards Yu-sung and the bone soldier. Both of them raised their arms to defend. The light collided and a white explosion burst out. A few seconds passed. Sumire was being crushed under a pile of rocks. She was covered in wounds as she looked up. In front of Sumire was a skeleton. But the bone soldier was now seriously injured. His ribs and arms were almost completely destroyed. His face was lifeless and gradually crumbling. Sumire crawled towards him. Bone soldier. The powerless bone soldier fell to pieces on the ground. She was shocked as she reached out. Bone soldier. Sumire looked around in a panic. Where's Yu-sung? She was startled as she glanced to the side. Suddenly the system continued to announce, high-rank monster information. Warning panels appeared one after another. Warning. Boss. Name. Crystal Golem. Danger level. 4. Sumire looked back. The monster was no longer a normal golem. It had a demonic appearance, and a face that looked like a human. Outside the window, pure white snowflakes were falling continuously. Suddenly, the clock rang. Its alarm going off repeatedly. Hearing the clock ringing, Sumire drowsily reached for the clock. She gently reached out and turned off the clock that was ringing repeatedly. Then Sumire rubbed her eyes and slowly opened them wide. She sat up, stretching while still not fully awake, and yawned. Then she slowly walked down the hallway. Before she even opened her eyes, she quickly greeted the two people in front of her. "Good morning, Mom and Dad." Hearing that, they also turned around and greeted her cheerfully. "Good morning, Sumire." Then her dad reminded her, "Oh right, I heard the forecast say it's quite cold today. Remember to dress warmly." Her mom gently requested her help. "Sumire, can you help me make breakfast?" Seeing that, Sumire politely responded, "Yes, Mom." Soon, the food was quickly placed on the table. Looking at the food before her, Sumire couldn't help but excitedly put her hands together and said, "Thank you for the meal." After breakfast, Sumire and her two younger siblings went to brush their teeth happily. Then Sumire quickly got ready for school. As she was about to leave, her mom called out to her, "Sumire, you forgot your scarf." Hearing that, Sumire turned her head back and said, "Ah, thank you." Then her mom approached her and calmly put the scarf around her. In a moment, the scarf was carefully put around her by her mother. When she finished, she said with satisfaction, "Here, all done." Then, her mom didn't forget to remind her, smiling sweetly, "Be careful on your way." At this time, she was reaching out to open the door. As she stepped out, she said cheerfully, "I'm off." Then Sumire stepped outside. She walked quickly down the road covered in snow. As she walked, she looked at the snowflakes falling in front of her, her face a bit thoughtful. While she was absent-mindedly looking at the snowflakes and in thought, a hand suddenly reached towards her from behind. It was Harumi. She suddenly ran up close and said loudly, "Sumire, thank you." Her friend with glasses saw this action and was filled with killing intent, while Sumire, startled, stammered, "Why you're Harumi?" She replied, "Yes, it's me, Sumire." Suddenly, her friend with glasses appeared beside them and hit Harumi on the head. Then she said, "You're scaring Sumire." Harumi, in pain, let go of Sumire and said, "I'm sorry." Sumire just stood there, confused. The three girls walked together. Harumi boasted, "I was ranked 6th in the last written test." Sumire asked, "Really?" Harumi continued, "The knowledge you taught me just happened to be on the test." Hearing that, she replied, "No, it was thanks to your effort. I only taught you a little bit." But Harumi still winked happily. "Thank you so much, Sumire." Her friend with glasses also took off her mask and praised, "You're a reliable friend, Sumire." And so, the three of them continued to chat excitedly. When they got to school, Harumi asked, "So, where should we go now?" "Let's go to the bakery," said the girl with glasses. "I heard that place has some really delicious matcha pastries." Suddenly, a boy approached Sumire, startling her. She jumped when she saw the boy in front of her. "Why you, Ishin?" Then he looked down at her face with a cold glare. His gaze made her unable to not be afraid. But then, he smiled. Not only that, but he also started talking to Sumire. "I was surprised that." Ishin praised, "Your test score was quite high," making her feel bewildered. Then he turned and walked away. As he was walking, he encouraged her, "Keep up the good work." Hearing his words, Sumire responded nervously, "Oh, okay." Harumi, hearing that, was shocked. Ishin knows how to praise others? At this moment, Sumire thought to herself, "How strange." Just thinking about it made Sumire blush shyly. In her class, the teacher called for attention. "Everyone, pay attention." He announced with satisfaction, "One person from our class F has entered the top 20, he said, and is the first person from our school to rank that high," making all the students in the class surprised. The teacher smiled with satisfaction and looked at Sumire. "Congratulations, Hanajima Sumire," making her surprised as well. Her classmates admired her. "So it's you, Sumire?" Her male classmate was also surprised. You're really good." Sumire shyly rubbed her head. "Everyone believed in me." She thought happily, "I'll work even harder to get better." During lunchtime at school, Harumi praised her. "Sumire, you're amazing. Now, you're a role model for the entire class." She answered humbly, I just got lucky." Harumi continued, "Don't be so humble. It's obvious that you like being praised. Everyone says you're amazing. One of the top 20 people came from Class F. You're the best, Sumire." She was embarrassed. "Is that so?" Her friend with glasses said, "You don't need to be humble. If you have the ability, you have the right to be proud." But in her heart, Sumire still felt, "Maybe I haven't tried enough yet." Harumi, without hesitation, advised, "You should apply to Chotin Academy if you keep up this level of achievement." But, in her heart, Sumire felt, "Maybe I'm being too greedy." Then, She fell silent. She realized, or rather, it was a bottomless greed. A man's voice rang out. I'll say it again. The teacher stood in front of all the students lined up. A hunter can encounter danger at any time. If you think cleaning a dungeon is too difficult, he raised his hand and continued, then giving up is also a form of courage. Then he said seriously, always remember this. Safety is the most important thing. All the students there focused and listened to his words. You are not only the future of Japan, but also of all humanity. Then, he bowed his head. Lastly, if your mana suddenly goes out of control. The teacher's eyes looked at the students. Everyone looked eager and ready. Seeing that, he was also in a daze. He felt relieved in his heart and smiled, thinking, they all look ready. He said, well then, with the authority of a rank 5 hunter, I declare the gate of... Suddenly, a light appeared. The stone statues also began to light up. Behind him, a gate emitting a blue light appeared. Dungeon Area 12 is officially open. The students gradually followed each other as they entered the gate. The blue light looked as if once you stepped into it, you would never be able to escape. Sumire stared at it. Suddenly, she felt hesitant, causing her face to sweat. She glanced behind her. A hand patted Sumire's shoulder. It was Harumi and her friend with glasses, smiling brightly. They were always behind her, encouraging her. Sumire, feeling encouraged, confidently stepped into the gate. Suddenly, a skeleton appeared, scaring everyone. After the students dealt with the remaining skeletons, the system announced, you have successfully cleared the first floor of the dungeon. You can rest for 10 minutes before moving to the next floor. The orange-haired student and another student complained because they were tired. I'm so tired. The orange-haired student held out his hand to take the milk. Even the first floor was too difficult. The other student agreed, yeah, this test is much harder than I thought. The orange-haired student drank his milk. I thought it would be difficult, but I didn't know it would be this hard. The other student said, we should still try our best. Then he looked in another direction. We also have a talented necromancer here. The orange-haired student said helplessly, you're hyping her up a bit too much. It turned out that he was looking at Sumire. She was standing next to a skeleton, checking her mana. She thought, this is bad. My mana. Looking at her hands, Sumire knew she was about to run out. It made her feel worried. Suddenly, someone called her name. Sumire. It was her classmate. Come here and drink some water. What are you thinking about? Sumire was startled. Ah. No, it's nothing. Thank you. Her classmate gave Sumire a drink. Thank you, Sumire. She was surprised. Why are you thanking me? Her classmate said brightly, we're all relying on you. Then she encouraged, do your best. Hearing this made Sumire space out. The others were happily talking to her classmate. Amane, give me another one, please. Her classmate turned back and smiled. Okay, well, good luck. Sumire stood in a corner, looking at everyone. She thought, they all look so happy. Then she spaced out again. They're all relying on me? Her gaze suddenly became heavy, looking down at the ground, thinking, if I give up, everyone will. Many thoughts came into Sumire's mind. The reason why I want to become a hunter? Then, she was lost in thought again. That's right. She was still confused, asking herself, why do I want to become a hunter? I'm such an idiot, right? She also had her own reason. But if she had to give one reason, then she tried to convince herself, that is probably. She was always trying. I want to strive, to gain praise and trust from other people. She knew very well that she liked. She knew very well that her own efforts were because of all of that. Due to her mixed thoughts, Sumire's hands started to tremble. Suddenly, her eyes became lifeless. Tears and sweat flowed down her face uncontrollably. Her eyes became lifeless as she looked in an unknown direction. Suddenly, she looked up. A blinding red light, she didn't know when, slowly started to appear in the sky. It was controlling sharp rocks, getting closer to Sumire. But she was still motionless. The rocks were getting bigger and coming closer. She looked at them unconsciously. And then the rocks fell. But Yusung had managed to run over in time to block it. He turned back and asked, are you okay? Sumire spoke, it's impossible for someone like me to become a hunter. Yusung didn't understand and asked, Sumire? She lowered her head. No matter how hard I try, she looked down, stammering, always, cause trouble. Yusung suddenly called out, Sumire. She raised her head to look at him. Yusung. She mumbled, I'm sorry. Sumire sobbed, I think I should give up. At this moment, Sumire sat cross-legged on the ground, looking up as she spoke. Yusung, you once asked me why I came to Gaon Academy, didn't you? She smiled faintly, a bit awkwardly, and continued, I thought I came here because I wanted to change. I realized that myself. But now, looking back, I just wanted to run away. When I wake up in the morning, I look out the window because it's easier that way. I have to face the gazes of so many people, have to face my own mistakes. I was happy before, of course. I really liked being here. Sumire suddenly recalled the past. I tried my best to change myself. She had blended in happily and made friends with everyone. Now I feel like, enjoying that happiness was too much for me. And then, her face suddenly became terrified. I realized something early on. Looking at the rotting skeleton there, she understood that the outcome won't change no matter where I might run away to. Gripping her skirt tightly, Sumire confessed, "Because I'm a coward," she said with a sigh. "I'm sure you've overcome many difficulties, but," she continued, "someone like me is just an obstacle for you." Then she asked, "I'm pathetic, aren't I?" Yusung spoke up, "You're not pathetic or a failure like you think." Sumire was extremely surprised to hear that. But she thought it was just a comforting word, those comforting words. Then Yusung said, "I'm not comforting you." He looked at Sumire. "It's just that I can't accept what you're saying." He felt that she was a hard worker. Since they met, he realized that Sumire wanted to change herself. He had always observed her and knew she hadn't given up until the very last moment. She's always hard-working. She can't be pathetic or weak. Yusung's feet stepped closer to Sumire. "Because the reason behind why I want to become this strong." She gradually raised her head. He resolutely said, "It's not to assert my own position or to not let others laugh at me." Yusung said sincerely, "Sumire, the reason why I can get back up after my failures." Sumire was stunned when she heard those words. "It's not because I'm stronger than you." He explained, "But I try so hard only for one person." He remembered the image of that person, someone who saw, someone who made me believe in myself. Yusung continued, "If you want to give up, you can rest." He thought, "You've already tried your best," making Sumire choked up. Yusung affirmed, "But this isn't your fault." He reached out his hand towards Sumire. "However, if you want to change to become stronger," his hand extended, wanting Sumire to take it to stand up, "I believe you can do it." Sumire was bewildered. Then she began to tear up. She reached out and took his hand. But a voice echoed in Sumire's head, startling her. "She's definitely Sumire." She immediately withdrew her hand. The voices echoed in Sumire's head, "Sumire, we can always rely on you. It's all thanks to you. Sumire, we're all depending on you. Sumire, if you give up, everyone will. Sumire, it's all your fault. It's all your fault." Everything became chaotic. The reproaches kept echoing. "It's all your fault. It's your fault. It's all your fault. It's your fault, Sumire." The image of her mother holding her hand appeared, asking, "Sumire, are you sure about this?" Her mother hesitated. But then continued, "If you're forcing yourself to bear everything." Her mother looked at her with affectionate eyes. "I will." But she interrupted, "Mom." She suddenly hesitated a bit and stammered, "I still." Sumire placed her hand on her mother's hand. She resolutely said, "I want to become a hunter." At this moment, she tightly closed her eyes, tears streaming down. Yusung had taken Sumire's hand. He suddenly chuckled lightly. Then he immediately said, "Indeed." As he was speaking, a light appeared behind Yusung. "I'm really lucky to have you as a friend." That light emitted with a strong intensity. It was rushing down fast, getting closer and closer. After the impact, black streams of air flew out from the dust cloud. Sumire opened her eyes and saw a bandaged hand lying on the ground. The clothes had the image of a black dragon. Yusung was silent, not saying anything. He raised his hand. "War God Awakening. First form." His eyes emitted light. He said, "Black dragon form." In a corner of the room, fast food wrappers scattered about. A message suddenly popped up, "Bored in the middle of the night." Looking at the computer screen, the number of viewers and the live stream time were displayed. Nothing's happening? Seeing the number of viewers changing, it was constantly decreasing. Is she okay with that? Rose was still dozing off. She was always like that. Truly, our team is so professional. Suddenly, the system made a loud noise. An alert, causing her to jump in surprise. Sleepily she asked, "What was that?" Then saw the notification. "The central boss raid of Jade Island has begun." Her eyes lit up. "What is this? Are they going to fight the boss?" Rose opened the can of drink in her hand. She excitedly clicked the mouse repeatedly. "Faster than I thought." The scene in the game gradually appeared. She was curious. Is it Class A challenging the boss, or Class B? A robot appeared to connect. A message of inquiry popped up. "They're going in a group, huh?" "Of course. What else? Are they going to fight the boss alone?" "True. I sometimes go fight it when I'm bored. I think Adela could do it alone," she said expectantly. "So now then." Then she quickly clicked the mouse. "The main characters who have challenged our boss are..." Suddenly the robot gradually disappeared. The images of Sumire and Yusung appeared. She was stunned when she saw the image in front of her. Yusung had transformed into a different form. Sumire saw that he was surrounded by black air and said, "Mana." Looking at his back, she continued, "It's gathering around Yusung." Suddenly, he stopped and said, Sumire, this black dragon skin I'm wearing is very greedy. Yusung looked up. It doesn't just desire my mana, but all the mana around too. As he spoke, his hands focused the mana around him, and, standing in front of Sumire to protect her, he said, the skill that changes mana into my own energy is Black Dragon Armor. Yusung said, concentrate. The surrounding mana also wrapped around his arm. His eyes looked determined as he said, War God Awakening. Then he swung his fist. Raging Dragon Earth-Shattering Palm is a move that gathers mana, making it as powerful as a dragon. He swung it towards the golem at a very fast speed. Two enormous sources of power were about to clash. His fist was much bigger than the golem, but it was being absorbed by the golem. Sumire, seeing this, worriedly said, the golem is absorbing that palm force again. Yusung calmly replied, but there will be a limit. If it becomes too greedy, the container will overflow. The mana was being absorbed significantly, but it could not absorb anymore, so the distance between them became closer, surprising the golem. Yusung said, the golem is the same. Then the two clashed. The power of the fist was too great, creating an overwhelming force against the golem. After the collision, it was affected and gradually started to crack. He said that this would be difficult to do alone. Sumire was bewildered. She was still staring at his back, but thankfully, there are two of us. After that, Yusung turned his head and asked, are you ready, Sumire? Sumire bit her lip hesitantly. She thought, I can feel it. She put her hand on her chest. She was feeling Yusung's mana, Yusung's thoughts. Sumire's hand began to emit mana. She had thought it through. I've tried hard enough. It's not my fault. So, in her heart, she didn't want to give up. At this moment, Sumire's eyes had also changed. The skeleton on the ground was also gradually moving. Sumire and the skeleton combined to create Black Dragon Armor enhancement. After being overwhelmed, the golem counterattacked by firing many beams of light. The skeleton dashed forward, constantly dodging the projectiles. Sumire said confidently, I'm counting on you, Mr. Skeleton. Then the skeleton nodded and charged forward. It ran to intercept the golem, which was generating a huge source of power. Two large sources of power collided. Sumire poured all her mana into it. The skeleton was also trying its best. The golem was attacked by two sources of power at the same time. Yusung's attack struck it, causing the cracks to widen. He raised his hand, directing the course of the attack. It hit the core of the golem directly. The golem couldn't withstand it and screamed. After the attack, the ground began to shake. The cave was cracking. Sharp rocks were growing all around Sumire, Yusung, and the skeleton. They were growing in great numbers, close together, very dangerous. Seeing this, Yusung activated War God Awakening. The skeleton did the same, one of its eyes emitting light. He created a large vortex with a black core that spread all around. The skeleton, in turn, created a vortex with a blue light. Through the screen, a female teacher spoke. That attire. Lin Xiao recognized it. That's an artifact that the Tyrant King used in the past. Artifacts are usually divided into 4 types: common, rare, unique, and legendary. However, among them, there are still artifacts that are more valuable than even the legendary rank. Such artifacts only exist as one of a kind and cannot be found anywhere else in the dimension. They are called epic. There are also artifacts created with ancient technology that cannot be deciphered, called ancient. Finally, there are artifacts created from materials from other dimensions. They seem to be mysterious. The female teacher said, that's a mysterious rank artifact. The attire Yusung is wearing is the Black Dragon Armor. It consumes so much mana that no one can use it. It's a ridiculous creation. Lin Xiao was surprised. I didn't expect him to be able to use such an artifact. Colorless. Behind Yusung, the silhouette of a large man appeared. Yusung closed his eyes and thought, black is the darkest color. While Sumire was struggling to fight, he was still lost in thought, even though there are differences in brightness. The skeleton was also trying its best, but black has neither color nor saturation. When glancing over it, one might think that no color has stained it yet. The skeleton punched directly into the golem's core. It was severely damaged, but Yusung was still confused. But I think differently. Black doesn't want to be discolored. He opened his eyes, so it will swallow everything. His vision was centered on the core of the golem. He seriously sensed and silently confirmed. It is a very warm color. At this moment the golem was deformed. It looked directly at him and roared, then seethed with anger. It roared and fired beams of light. It targeted the 3 of them, but Yusung used his hand to create an energy ball full of mana. Then, he approached it and used Infinite War God Awakening. He gently put his hand on it. Then he used Black Moon, pushing his energy inside. It was quickly destroyed. Everyone witnessed the scene of its destruction. It was flung away, then slowly cracked and shattered completely. Its body broke into many pieces even before Yu Sung lowered his hand. Through the screen, the golem's corpse appeared. Rose was eating and in shock. Sumire was happily tearful. Ayun smiled, finding it interesting. An old man stroked his beard and smiled faintly. Suhyun was stunned and sweating. Lin Xiao and the female teacher stood silently watching. Then a system notification appeared. Jade Island Area 2, the giant crystal golem boss, has been defeated. At this moment, the cave suddenly became quiet without a sound. A hand picked up the red monocore. The skeleton gestured that they did a great job. Sumire asked, "This is?" Holding the monocore in his hand, Yu Sung continued. "The golem's monocore, a gem." Suddenly, it emitted some kind of signal. A system notification appeared before them. "Congratulations, you have collected the core of the giant crystal golem. You have earned 900 points, Sumire exclaimed in a panic. 900 points? Yu Sung happily said, "Then we can aim to become one of the 7 stars. A voice echoed, "That." Reflexively, Yu Sung and Sumire turned around. 3 boys appeared and walked forward. The one with blue hair in the middle spoke up. "Only happens when you can escape this place," he said jealously. "Honestly, I was really surprised. I didn't expect you to actually defeat it." The other 2 also declared aggressively, "So we decided to change our plan. Instead of hunting golems, we'll hunt you." Sumire was dissatisfied. You didn't say that at first." He began to use his power. "I said I'd let you guys go first. Water droplets rose from the ground, but I never said I'd let you leave." A monstrous beast was gradually forming. "This isn't a warning. It's simply a statement to let you know." A huge water-made beast was standing behind him. Then he lifted his hand. While controlling the beast to attack Yu Sung, he shouted, "Give me your bag." Seeing this, the skeleton reacted quickly. It used its power to attack the beast but was flung away. At this time, the bones in its arm were cracked. The blue-haired boy arrogantly said, "It's useless." The beast attacked the skeleton with water. Then it was flung backward. Then it broke into many pieces because of the water attack. Sumire was terrified by that sight. Mr. Skeleton was defeated with just 1 attack. The other 2 also began to use their powers, approaching her and asking, "You've used up all your mana to defeat the golem, haven't you? It's best to surrender and give us the bag." Sumire, at a disadvantage, thought, "I don't have any mana left to activate any skills." She worriedly clenched her fist. She looked at him and called out, Yu Sung," he responded. Sumire. Yu Sung was still standing nonchalantly, not afraid at all. He looked at her and said, "We have enough points, let's go home now." The blue-haired boy, seeing him so fearless, laughed provocatively. "You want to run?" Everyone there paused when he spoke. "Do you think? The magic gate has been activated. Do you think I didn't prepare any traps?" Sumire was surprised and said, "The passage." Yu Sung smiled reassuringly. "Sumire, it's okay." He reached out and took her hand. Her face lit up at his words. "We will leave." Yu Sung pulled Sumire closer, into the sky. The blue-haired boy, angry, used his hand to create many large water jets and attacked them, shouting, "Ridiculous, I will drown you here." But with his speed, Yu Sung quickly dodged. The blue-haired boy was surprised. He dodged it? Ignoring him, Yu Sung carried Sumire in his arms and asked, "Sumire, are you ready?" She blushed and replied, "Why yes, I'm ready." He looked up and told her, "Hold on tight," then jumped toward the gate. At this moment, the blue-haired boy panicked. No. He bit his lip. "If I let him go, my position in the 7 stars will be threatened." The other 2, seeing this, lost their composure and became noisy. "What was that? He flew? Hey, he escaped." Before one of them could finish speaking, "You're going to take responsibility?" He was punched in the face with water by the blue-haired boy. Suddenly he lost his temper and shouted, "Shut up." He gritted his teeth, furious, and cursed in his heart. "Shin Yasung, even if you're just a trashy class F, how dare you?" Onojima Sumire slowly opened her pink eyes and woke up. Before her eyes was a black frame that contained nothing. She suddenly uttered an unclear word. "Oh." Now she saw the sky bright with stars shining above. Suddenly, Hanajima Sumire was picked up by someone, and she said in a panic, wait a minute." That person carried her up into the sky, slowly flying into a pitch-black sky. Hanajima Sumire said in a panicked voice, "Into the sky?" The higher she flew, the more she cried out. Each step of that person was as soft as walking on a carpet in the air. The person said, "To prevent the worst-case scenario for you, be careful." Onojima Sumire said in a timid tone. Then, the other person said, "Let's go." In the dark sky, on a path covered by the heavens, the 2 walked intently, not paying attention to anything. Onojima Sumire said, "It's really high." A moment later, the person turned around and said a few bland but slightly threatening words. making Hanajima Sumire answer awkwardly, "If you accidentally let go, I'd know how to land safely, right? No?" The person replied with a calm face, "Have we jumped too high? Even the island looks very small." The girl continued, "But if we go down there, it'll be over." Hanajima Sumire replied gently, "Yes, yes, the test." The two continued to walk in mid-air with only darkness surrounding them. Then the person praised her, "You did great, Sumire." In her pink eyes, filled with sweetness and a hint of worry, Sumire said, "That's right." Sumire walked. Then she said, "If the test ends." Suddenly, Hanajima Sumire, who had been walking lightly and rhythmically, stumbled, and her voice broke off, "There'll be no reason to." Hanajima Sumire was suspended in mid-air, causing Sumire to be startled. Sumire cried out as she fell, "Help!" For a moment, Hanajima Sumire closed her eyes to prepare to accept her fate. A second later, the other person's voice echoed, "Sumire." Hanajima Sumire's eyes sparkled like clear drops of water. Hanajima Sumire looked at the other person. The person, having caught her hand, replied, "Got you." The two didn't realize that they were in the middle of the air, holding hands and flying around in the sky. The person said, "Aren't you happy?" "What?" Now Hanajima Sumire's face reflected her true joy, which could be understood from her eyes, showing how happy she was. Hanajima Sumire replied, without a hint of pretense, "I'm very happy." The more Hanajima Sumire thought, the more things surged in her head like the sea overflowing. "I'm very happy, so I don't want this to end." The person looked at her with affection and asked, "Sumire, do you hate the word end?" After hearing this, Hanajima Sumire immediately asked back, "What about you?" The two didn't answer. They simply held hands and flew in the sky as the winds fluttered around them until dawn. The sky gradually brightened, and the sun gradually rose to illuminate the entire peaceful world. Suddenly, a voice echoed, "You're right, the future is uncertain." The others exchanged words, "Even if we are satisfied." It was the sweet voices of the students, disappointed. Then they kept talking. Each word, each memory returned. Happy. Each word that echoed always had a connection. Or sad. Hanajima Sumire said, "I still like the end." The person facing her, upon hearing this, gently, warmly and affectionately stroked her head repeatedly. The student with eyes that held countless warmth said, "Because I can cherish these memories as a precious past memory." The person kept hugging Hanajima Sumire's head, causing her face to turn red with embarrassment. The girl said, "And start again." A moment later, the system displayed a few lines of text, "The test has ended." In the middle of that afternoon, it was truly beautiful, and the achievements were announced. The blue board gradually displayed the students gathering around to see their results. "We will announce the rankings, we will announce the rankings. Top 1 Shin Yasung, Top 2 Hanajima Sumire, Top 3 Adela Hortensia." Amy Rose stood there watching, with a look of shock. A new student surpassed even Adela? Even Sumire made it to Top 2. Even the man watching the computer had to shout, "Shin Yusung is first place." The two students were also surprised and clamored, "Yusung and Sumire will become one of the 7 stars of the academy." A girl named Shin Hyun, after seeing it, also shut off the achievement board after viewing it. Rank 1 Shin Yusung. Shin Hyun propped her chin, sat with her leg up, and said in a low voice, "Not bad for someone who just arrived at the academy." At the award ceremony stage, with flashy lights illuminating the extraordinary individuals, a man named Yin Bayan Chol said, "Oh, students of Gaon Academy, today is a day of great pride." After speaking, he continued, as if stringing words together, "Once again, our Gaon Academy has achieved outstanding results." Some students below listened, while others did not. The name Gaon shines once more. Similarly, the most outstanding and prestigious faces of the academy stood on stage with satisfied and attentive expressions. This glory is achieved thanks to the efforts and talents of our academy's students. And the exciting and suspenseful words were called out. And of course, the one who shines the brightest is. All the faces up there shone. They were mentioned and congratulated by many people. The honored 7 stars. Then he continued, "Everyone, let's give them a warm round of applause." A moment after finishing, he invited those behind him up and said, "Come, you all, step forward." Yin Bayan Chol continued to speak non-stop. "In the history of Gaon, this has never happened." Then he pointed at student Hanajima Sumire with a gentle demeanor. "A student from Class F has become one of the 7 stars." The other students continued to listen to Yin Bayan Chol. "Remember to become a good example for other students." Kim Yuna looked up and was stunned for an unknown reason. She let out a soft PFFT, but she didn't know someone was staring at her from below. "Look at that face." Park Soo-hyun was walking by when he was mentioned. Kim Una said, "Oh, who's this?" Kim Yuna continued to talk to him. "Isn't that someone from our class, number 7, Park Soo-hyun?" Kim Eun's ridicule of her friend made Park Soo-hyun's face darken. Ah, that's right. You don't have that title anymore, do you? She scratched her head in confusion and said again, "Oops, I forgot." She kept glancing at her friend with those deep blue eyes. A moment later, she spoke again. "Got nothing to say?" Park Soo-hyun, his face pale with obvious anger, retorted, "It was just bad luck." Immediately, she laughed and said sarcastically, "What was that? Bad luck?" Kim Eun kept talking, making Park Soo-hyun clench his fists. "I didn't expect you to say that." The voice echoed again. "Then what do you think I should say?" She continued, "I lost because I'm not good enough?" The voice became louder and clearer. "What? Effort, or talent?" Park Soo-hyun continued, as if touching on anything in their conversation could turn it into a confrontation. "Even though I temporarily don't have that title, it doesn't change anything." His last words before leaving to prevent a fight, he said with as much intensity as possible, "That position is mine." She stood there and laughed. Then she said a few provocative words to her opponent. "Okay. Try your best to get back. Class A needs at least 2 stars to be proud of." Upon hearing these words, the blue eyes like the ocean had added a fiery red anger. Yin Byan-chul bumped into a student. Someone's voice echoed, not too loud, "While smoking, I heard you were removed from the 7 stars. He took a drag from his cigarette and said in a threatening tone, "I'll give you 3 days. Somewhere else, Park Soo-hyun looked at the watch on his hand. According to its amazing function, it sent a message to its owner for him to see. The application process is complete. With his eyes full of malice, many thoughts immediately appeared in his head. That's right, I can get it back. The more he thought, the old thoughts came flooding back into his memory. He's just relying on his master's halo. But then his mouth said a few more words, just a class F. Park Soo-hyun looked at the watch on his hand, which displayed, Student Council President, Observer Approved, Shin Ha-yoon. A moment later, a blue board displayed the confrontation between 2 individuals, Shin Ya-sung versus Park Soo-hyun. Duel allowed for the position of one of the 7 stars. It was announced to all students in the academy. Announcement from the Student Council, in 30 minutes, there will be a match for the position of one of the 7 stars. The title holder, rank 7, Shin Ya-sung. The challenger, rank 8, Park Soo-hyun. In Park Soo-hyun's mind, it was very chaotic, and he kept thinking, but it's better to be careful, the item transfer process is complete. After those quarrelsome words, Park Soo-hyun's mind finally reached its peak, wanting to achieve his goal. No matter what, I will try my best. The students kept walking back and forth. Lee Hyuk, as if reminding, this year's freshmen are very hot-headed. A match right after the test ended. A voice echoed next to him. It seems like he can't accept that his seat was taken by a Class F student. Shin Ha-yoon was intently looking at the name Shin Ya-sung, then said, what do you guys think? Shin Ha-yoon exclaimed, who will win? Lee Hyuk beside him said, of course, Park Soo-hyun, not only his skills but he's also very smart. The sword wielder said, that's right, until now, he was unlucky, but, the other person continued, there's no way Soo-hyun would lose a match. Shin Ha-yoon's eyes flashed with something mysterious. She softly replied, is that so? At a stage surrounded by rows of seats filled with students, a voice suddenly rang out, everyone, breaking news. Amy Rose said with an unusually excited and thrilled voice, this is the first challenge of the year. A blue board continued to appear with square and round characters. The students' comments, Amy seems excited. Wasn't the exam just finished? The mock challenges are eager. I just placed my bet. Am I late? Amy Rose continued with the same expression, speaking to the robot. After the test, challenges never happen. The ranked Class A student, Park Soo-hyun, is the one who initiated the challenge. The blue light on the board immediately changed to an image of Park Soo-hyun with his blue ocean eyes. He will assert his position in the Academy's International Hunter Competition. All the comments from the Academy students appeared on the magical blue board. Those exchanges were filled with emotions for the competition. If it's a challenge, shouldn't he be a former member of the 7 stars? So, he even has a position in the Academy? Truly an elite among the elite. Wow, when does it start? 2 students whispered somewhere in the seats, looks like his pride got hurt. It's understandable, after all, he was kicked out of the 7 stars by a Class F student. A moment later, something happened, causing the entire academy to be shocked and ask, is he okay? A student named Adela Hortensia quietly exclaimed when she heard, so, that's the Tyrant King. In her deep eyes, filled with many thoughts, the old scene now reappeared. I love you, Father. She kept thinking about the teddy bear, unable to understand its meaning. Then she continued to think more. While thinking, a voice suddenly echoed, and she looked up at that person. You came to watch too? Kim Eun said, with her gang behind her. What a surprise. Upon hearing this, Adela Hortensia retorted, I'm the one who should be saying that. Kim Yuna and her gang walked up to Adela Hortensia and said, "I'm the representative of Class A, so I have to come." They then arrived at the arena where the difficult competition was about to take place. The 7 challenges will begin soon. The academy announced, "Both students, please enter the arena." The footsteps from backstage echoed loudly. Shin Yusung's face showed a clear expression of silence. A student said, as if reminding, "Yusung, there are only 2 possible outcomes in gowns competition." The person held up one finger and said again, 1. You consolidate your title. The person clenched their fist and released it. Upon hearing it, 2. Your title will be taken away. Shin Yusung wasn't too pleased with that. He continued to listen. "How does it feel, Yusung?" Somewhere a voice echoed. But no one could hear it. "Being born as a cripple, do you feel despair?" That person's face turned dark when he heard those words. "Does it hurt?" The voice echoed again, like it was carving into someone's heart. "Come on, tell me." Back to Shin Yusung, who was doing something and suddenly said, "So, this is what this place is like." A clear voice echoed somewhere unknown. "Gown, where my sister reigns like a king." As Shin Yusung stepped out with a few successful steps, the introduction was played again. "The defender, student Shin Yusung, is entering." Shin Yusung looked around. From above, there was an unclear figure standing and observing him because it was too dark. Gradually, the person was revealed to be Shin Hyun. He looked up and smiled. His face hid the thoughts inside. Just wait and see. He stepped up with footsteps as soft as walking on a cotton carpet. "I will catch up to you soon." As soon as he stepped up, a voice from a young man named Park Soo-hyun rang out. "You've arrived." Then another name was called. Shin Yusung. Park Soo-hyun, fueled by the envy of the competition, said harsh words. "I thought you would run away." The announcer's voice repeated, "Both contestants have entered." A voice from an announcer said, "The challenge will begin." Both looked at each other silently and listened. "We will begin the countdown." Yin Bayan-chol and the announcer started to count down. 3. Every minute, every second was like holding one's breath in suspense. Park Soo-hyun said, "Now you can't run away either." The countdown was repeated. 2. Shin Yusung started first with his stance. His posture was ready to be used at any moment. His deep blue eyes looked at the deep brown eyes seriously. The final second rang out. 1. Despite the complexity, someone was still thinking about him. "Yusung," student Hanajima Sumire said, "there are only 2 possible outcomes in Gowns Challenge." Gradually all the voices echoed. 1. You consolidate your title. A dangerous and mysterious voice echoed from someone with crossed arms watching. 2. Your title will be taken away. After everyone fell into another dimension, notifications appeared. Characteristics are evaluated based on potential, destructive power, accuracy, safety level, and rarity. Besides that, a hunter's fate is also governed by the ranking that the Hunter Association assigns to their characteristics. All those who become hunters must abide by this. Theories continue to be put forth. In this world, of course, an S-rank hunter will be stronger than an A-rank hunter and vice versa. None of the hunters in the top 7 are not S-rank hunters. However, among A-rank hunters, none are below rank 6. Park Soo-hyun's face was pensive for a moment, and he concluded, "Such is fate." In the blue light of the dimension, he was slightly melancholy. Lost in thought. Without comparing power, the outcome is already known. Suddenly, flashes of light darted through the air. Looking around, he saw a kid using his power. Oni's eyes were a little cold. Amy Rose suddenly shouted, "What's going on, student Shin Yusung?" In the darkness, attacks were being unleashed continuously, and Shin Yusung replied, "He's blocking all of the continuous attacks." Shin Yusung continued to witness Park Soo-hyun's attacks. "Look, he's advancing, he's close." Lin Xiao was a little surprised. Is he really a Class F student? In the darkness, Park Soo-hyun's figure appeared and faced Lin Xiao. Suddenly, Park Soo-hyun smirked, while Oni was still continuously throwing punches. Suddenly, Oni stopped. Oni chuckled and replied, "Not bad, truly a disciple of the Tyrant King." Oni lifted his heel. Too bad for him. Oni's face suddenly fell, and he was pensive. Soo-hyun's characteristic. The ice under his feet suddenly froze solid. Oni continued, "You can't overcome it simply by blocking." Oni's attacks continued to be unleashed in the darkness. Shin Yusung turned his head, and Hanajima Sumire suddenly shouted, "Yusung, be careful." Suddenly, a black smoke surrounded Yusung. War God awakening. The black smoke surrounded Yusung. Black dragon shift, black dragon. Mei Lin was a little surprised. Is he really a Class F? Jin Sung-ah was a bit thoughtful. Park Soo-hyun suddenly burst out laughing. He can still fight back? His laughter was a bit contemptuous. I don't know. Park Soo-hyun suddenly used the power from his hand, unleashing a final move. His eyes were a bit sharp. How long can you keep it up? Hanajima Sumire exclaimed, "This is bad. Bad." Onojima Sumire and Renia Amane guessed, puddles of water are appearing all over the arena from Suhyun's water dragon. If the battle drags on, the water dragon will become stronger, while the more puddles that appear, Yusung's movements will be limited until his mana runs out. All three of them were worried for Yusung. If it continues like this, then Yusung will. Park Suhyun laughed and said, "It's over." Suddenly, a blue light appeared, and Yusung said, "Focus." Yusung's eyes lit up, and he continued, "High concentration." Suddenly, Yusung unleashed a move. Shadows appeared. War God Awakening. Yusung continued to unleash his move. Even seeing it with my own eyes, I still can't believe it. That attack contains enough mana to cut the arena in half. The black streams of shadows rushed straight towards Suhyun. Suhyun was in danger. The ring on Suhyun's hand suddenly lit up, and Suhyun ordered, "Devour it." The ring suddenly lit up and responded to the black smoke streams. Ragias. That is, the ring had caused Yusung to pull back his power. Renia suddenly exclaimed, "Suhyun's eyes are cold." He smirked, "The Ring of Ragias." Everyone was extremely shocked. The Ring of Ragias, a unique artifact. Onojima Sumire gasped and said, "A unique artifact? No way." Lin Xiao suddenly shouted, "Shouldn't we stop this battle? It's gone too far." Suhyun laughed. Lin Xiao closed his eyes. "Stop." The sword wielder explained, "A duel is also part of the hunter training process. There's no problem." Suhyun laughed. "Look closely, Shin Yusung." Suhyun continued to explain, "I'll show you that, no matter how hard you try, there are still walls that you can't overcome," he said, while laughing. "It's time for you to disappear, you trashy Class F." A large blue tunnel lay deep within the earth off the coast of Belize, a place called the Great Blue Hole. At this moment, a faint, illusory dragon-shaped spirit appeared. It was more than just an ordinary horror story. It was the story of the Great Blue Hole. Now, Suhyun raised his hand and said, "The story of Rajia is true." Behind him, something faint suddenly appeared. Then he raised one hand and unleashed a powerful strike. Seeing this, Yusung raised his hand, resolutely responding with a powerful punch. The attack of Suhyun and the counterattack of Yusung, when they collided, created a massive shockwave that illuminated the area. It was the Black Dragon's crushing palm. Two attacks with immense magical power clashed fiercely. It was a demonstration of two students competing in a test of strength. Suddenly, Yusung seemed slightly surprised by something. He was still trying to withstand the opponent's attack. That powerful attack created a thick mist surrounding Yusung's body, as if to conceal his presence. The people watching this scene were astonished and shouted, "It went through!" Below the stands, Yusung suddenly sprang up high, escaping from that smoke. Before he could land, he was preoccupied with the thoughts in his head, "Rajia, that's definitely the monster that my master eliminated." As he landed, he looked at the green monster with its mouth wide open in front of him and thought, "This is a level 5 monster. The water dragon Rajia." While moving to dodge the attacks, Yusung couldn't shake off his thoughts. The water is moving faster and faster. Then he landed quickly and gently on the ground. Seeing this, Suhyun laughed mockingly. "Where did your momentum go? You're moving a bit slow." At this moment, Yusung didn't even bother with the taunts of the person in front of him, thinking, "If it continues like this, I'll be at a disadvantage." After thinking, he began to prepare to do something. Then he shot up quickly like a rocket that had just been launched. While rushing up, he thought, "There's no other way. I have to get close to him." Seeing this, Suhyun felt unenthusiastic and coldly raised his hand to unleash his magic power and said, "You still haven't accepted reality?" As he finished speaking, he unleashed powerful water vortices that rushed to attack Yusung. Yusung now resolutely looked at the huge vortices in front of him and suddenly turned his head and ran away. Seeing this scene, Suhyun felt angry and said, "Fast, you're fast." But, before he could finish speaking, he hastily shouted, "Rajia." Suddenly, something made Suhyun panicked and cry out. In front of Suhyun, Yusung appeared with a sharp and dark appearance like an awakened war god. Suddenly, he regained his composure and yelled, unleashing a lunar fall. Then both Yusung and Suhyun unleashed their moves, like War God Awakening, Black Dragon Lunar Fall Kick, as a sign that the battle was coming to an end. The people watching this scene whispered in confusion, "Is it over?" Suddenly, Suhyun smiled with a malicious look, while Yusung was struggling to fend off the attacks of the other person. Then, Suhyun said in a joyful and arrogant voice, "Checkmate." However, the battle between the two hadn't ended. Wave after wave of attacks were unleashed from both sides. Then, Suhyun quietly asked, "You still haven't accepted it?" At this moment, Yusung suddenly stood up, and as he put his hand on the ground, he said, "The winner was decided before the match even started." Hearing this, Suhyun replied, "So." Before he could finish, Yusung interrupted, "Everything seems pretty easy for you, Huh? Seeing Yusung's attitude, Soo-hyun was annoyed and angrily asked, "What?" Yusung slowly stood up and said, "If you think the outcome is already decided, then you must be very complacent." Then he gently adjusted his clothes and glared sharply at Soo-hyun, scaring him a bit. Seeing this, Soo-hyun seemed quite surprised by Yusung's sharp words. Then Yusung suddenly continued, "Even before this battle, you were pretty bad." Soo-hyun, upon hearing Yusung's words, felt angry and gritted his teeth. "What nonsense are you talking about? You've finally lost it. I have Rajya." As he finished, he raised his hand, intending to control Rajya to do something. Suddenly, his expression turned horrified as he saw the scene before him. Yusung suddenly said, "You're right, not everyone who tries hard will receive a worthy reward." Everyone's faces fell. Yusung continued, "Some people will feel that's their limit." Sumire was a bit embarrassed. Yusung continued, "Or even give up." Soo-hyun was suddenly panicking. "No way, Rajya." In the light combined with the green smoke, he shouted, "How can a piece of trash from Class F?" Soo-hyun lunged forward, but passed through Yusung. The system announced, "Your defensive barrier has been destroyed." While Soo-hyun was on the ground, Yusung said, "Finally, we both made our own choices." Yusung's eyes fell, and he continued, "I won't let anyone decide my fate." Shin Ha-yoon felt a chill. "It's as if he's talking to me." The system announced, "Former member of the 7 Stars, Park Soo-yeon, has lost." The system continued to appear. "Congratulations, Shin Yusung. The 3rd-ranked student has won." The system continued to announce on the big screen, "Yusung will receive the I-hat ticket that Soo-hyun had bet." The robot said, "This is an international competition organized by the Hunter Association, so the winner will receive a huge sum of money and rare artifacts. Among the competitions for academy students who have not officially become hunters, this is one of the not fun at all." What? Is that enough of an explanation? So, that means it's time for an advertisement. The headphones I'm using today are... Sumire, Lee Siwoo, and Renia rushed over, shouting, "Yusung, Yusung." Sumire quickly grabbed his hand, saying, "Let's go get treatment." Shin Yusung looked at her with a helpless expression. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Lee Huk, the swordsman, and Shin Ha-yoon approached him and spoke, "Enough talking, step aside." The group looked at them in surprise. Shin Ha-yoon stepped forward, pulled out a blue card. Sumire quickly hid behind Shin Yusung. Both of them worried. She gave the blue card to him and said, "Congratulations, this is your pass for Nenhit." She smiled and said, "You've changed a lot since the last time I saw you." Yusung looked at her worriedly. She glanced at Sumire and said, "And it seems you have companions too." Sumire worriedly clung to Shin Yusung's hand. Then she widened her eyes. "However, has what you've changed really been the right thing?" She looked at Shin Yusung like a child afraid of being punished. He wanted to speak out against her, but he couldn't do anything. It was as if everything was submerged in black and white. Suddenly, Sumire grabbed his hand, which made him feel a little more secure. Sumire's face seemed to tell him that there was nothing to worry about. Shin Yusung seemed to gain courage. He took the card that Shin Yoon gave him and spoke, "I will change as I see fit." He stared at her defiantly and said, "No matter what others say." Ayoon was not happy with his attitude, but she still smiled and replied, "Okay." She and her companions turned to leave, not forgetting to wave goodbye to him. "I'll be waiting." When she left, the group sighed in relief. Sumire was the first to speak. "Khan, congratulations, Yusung." Renia and Lee Siwoo continued, "That's right. An N-hit pass right after the selection. You're the hope of Class F." In the distance, Kim Yuna and Adela looked at him and his friends. Kim Yuna smiled at Adela teasingly. She spoke, "Now you'll fight him at NIT, right?" Adela remained silent. She continued, "Do you think you can win against him?" Yuna continued to invite her. "If you want, I'll go with you." Adela's eyes grew darker and darker. She looked at Kim Yuna and her friends and replied, "I can do it myself." Adela raised her head, her voice full of arrogance, "Even if I don't team up like you, I'm still strong on my own." Scene changed to Sumire, Shin Yusung, Renia, and Lee Si-woo, who were walking and talking. That was amazing. Sumire was rambling, breaking an artifact, Raja, and defeating Park Soo-hyun. "I was worried you would get hurt." She spoke while eating. "Luckily, everything is okay." Lee Si-woo said, "So, Yusung, have you decided who will be your teammates yet?" Renia asked back, "Teammates?" Lee Si-woo explained, "So you don't know, N-hit is a competition where you can form a team of 3 or more." The harsh scene of Niet appeared, and Lee Si-woo continued, "But there are also people who confidently participate alone. If you get a good result at N-hit, you can even receive an artifact, and you have a chance to participate in the national competition too." Images of the previous winners of this competition appeared. Winning the national competition is the highest honor that everyone dreams of. The student council president Shin Hyun won the competition in her first year. Shin Yusung sighed, it's really too far apart. He thought about the issue that Lee Siwoo mentioned, teammates. While thinking, he looked at Sumire. Sumire, Renia, and Lee Siwoo separated and waved goodbye. See you later, Yusung. Goodbye. Shin Yusung also raised his hand and waved back. Okay, goodbye. He was walking in the hallway when he saw the figure of a girl. Suddenly, the girl jumped out and said, "Hi," which startled him. The girl winked and greeted him in a friendly manner. "Can I talk to you?" Shin Yusung was stunned and agreed. "Okay, but who are you?" The girl panicked when he asked that. "What? There are still students who don't know me?" She took out a business card with the word Amy in pink. "This is my business card." Then she excitedly introduced herself. "I'm from Class A. My name is Amy Rose." She pushed her glasses up, acting serious and said, "I'm an honor student at the Hunter Academy." But, suddenly, she changed 360 degrees, pointed at the sky, and proudly said, "When I'm live, I'm the most popular streamer." She continued to brag, "My average viewership is over 100,000, and the viewership for all my videos is over 10 million. The two could only stand there, not knowing what to do. However, what she just said was just a dream. She said shyly, "That's my dream, but I haven't achieved it yet." Returning to the main topic, she asked Shin Yusung, "So, as I said, can I film the competition you're going to participate in?" She made a mysterious gesture. "Come closer." After listening to what she said, Shin Yusung was dumbfounded. Sumire and Shin Yusung stood next to each other. Sumire exclaimed in surprise, "This is the 7 Stars Center." They stepped out of the elevator. The receptionist guided them toward their room. Sumire couldn't help but sigh, "It's so high." She was curious about everything around her. Touching the bathtub, the water is heated in an instant. She sat on the bed, unable to help but exclaim, "It's so big." Looking at the shiny, modern washing machine, a 2-in-1 washer-dryer, Shin Yusung looked at the food in the fridge and couldn't help but exclaim, "There's so much." Sumire was amazed by the full-screen TV, ATV, on the wall. She relaxed in the bathtub, unable to help but exclaim, "Everything is really amazing. Even the bathtubs I know have this feeling." She couldn't help but sigh. After taking a bath, she continued to ramble, "I miss everyone so much. That's right, the exam is over too. I can go see my family, and eat delicious food too. And the plane tickets are free for the 7 stars too." As she spoke, she imagined it. She pinched her cheek. Is this a dream? She rubbed her cheek and looked down at the cup holding 2 toothbrushes and the headphones that Shin Yusung gave her. She still couldn't believe this was real. She recalled when he patted her shoulder under the sunset. She sighed, "It feels more like a dream than a real dream. But it's not a dream." She thought of Shin Yusung and silently said, "I'm so lucky to have you as my partner." Suddenly, she seemed to remember something. "Partner, now that the exam is over, I don't have to." Her phone rang. Sumire was surprised when she saw the caller's name. She stammered, "Mom, Mom." Her mother's image appeared, smiling gently. "Sumire, how have you been lately? I heard the news." Her mother turned the camera down to show her siblings, who excitedly asked, Sis, you became one of the stars? You're so amazing. When did you get so strong?" She scratched her head shyly and replied, Well, it was just luck." Her mother worriedly warned, "You're not overworking, are you, Sumire?" She happily replied, "No, on the contrary, I'm very happy. I hope everything continues like this." She couldn't hide the happiness on her face. Sumire's mother, upon hearing her daughter say, "I'm very happy," also felt more at ease. Her mother seemed to see through her thoughts and asked, "What are you thinking?" Sumire was startled. "Yes, no." Her mother continued, "Do you know, old memories appeared. The reason why I stopped you at the airport. Actually, it's because I was scared." Her mother still smiled and said, "But soon," she said, "I'm very proud of you." Sumire was touched. Mom. She was flustered and didn't know what to say. You're making me embarrassed." "Okay, when you have time, I love you too." She lay down on the bed, lost in thought. From the stone on the back of her hand, an image of Oni appeared. Those images flashed by and disappeared. She comforted herself. Mom, telling me she's proud of me, always like that. She went back to when she was a child during a power test. She sadly read her results, Class F. Her mother gently patted her head. "It's okay. What's more important is that you want to help people, not your level, right?" Or when she failed to make cakes and choked out to her mother, "I thought it was sugar, but it turned out to be salt," and her sibling beside her complained, "Sis, it's too salty." Then her mother would smile gently. Or when she lay on her mother's lap and sadly asked, "Mom, can I become a hunter?" She comforted herself, Instead of regretting not daring to face the challenge, it's better to regret failing after trying my best. Shin Yusung opened the door and unexpectedly called out, "Sumire," and Sumire was too shy to say anything. She stood facing Yusung, nervously clutching her shirt, and stammered, Yusung. She wanted to express her thought that she wanted to team up with him. However, she still couldn't say it, only stammering, "I want to be your partner." You have? Yusung remained silent, listening to her. She stammered the two words, "partner." Then he repeated, partner. She remained rooted in place, struggling to say, ko. Finally, she blurted out, "Good luck." Returning to her room, Sumire recalled Yusung telling her, "Sumire, good luck too," which made her feel, "I'm so silly." Scene changed to the training room of the 7 stars. The system's voice rang out. 7 stars student Shin Yusung is beginning his training session. He steadily walked into the training area. Suddenly, Yusung thought about Shin Hyun. He reminisced about the past. She, since birth, has been different from me. An image of a young Yusung appeared as he admired a chrysanthemum stubbornly growing from a crack in a rock. Suddenly, Shai stepped forward, crushing the flower, making him startled. She widened her deep blue eyes, looking at him. It was because of this that Yusung thought, "I've never understood what she's thinking." Yusung, from a young age, had always admired and affirmed, "She is the pride of the Shino family." Her overwhelming strength and deep emerald eyes had made her look incredibly intimidating since she was a child. Therefore, Yusung thought, "Of course, I'm scared to face her." He clenched his fist, showing determination. "But now, my spirit," he thought, "has changed." Suddenly, a voice came from behind. "That's surprising." Suhyun approached, handing him a water bottle and said, "I thought you would be happy because you won. This isn't the expression a winner should have." Yusung happily took it and thanked him. "Thank you, Suhyun. I was thirsty." Suhyun looked at him helplessly and said, "The competition will start soon. Are you really drinking that without any suspicion?" Yusung chuckled and replied, "I don't think you're that kind of person." Suhyun took back the water bottle and warned, "At Gaon, you shouldn't trust anyone. After all, everyone is your opponent." Suddenly, a girl approached and called out, "Soo-yoon." She hesitantly spoke about what she said to him yesterday. Before she could finish, Suhyun interrupted, "Okay, I'll leave soon." Yusung looked at him and laughed. "You always think one thing and say another, huh?" Suhyun asked, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Yusung replied, "Never giving up, but saying that trying is meaningless. Besides, even though you told me not to trust anyone, you still put your trust in others." Suhyun looked confused and asked, "What?" Yusung didn't answer his question but continued, "What is it that you want that you have that expression after winning?" As he spoke, he gestured with his hand, "I want to be the strongest." Suhyun asked in confusion, "The strongest? What is that? Are you serious?" Even in Gaon, there's the student council president Shin Hyun, an extremely powerful individual. Yusung replied seriously, "Yes, I want to win. Surpassing everyone, at any cost." He corrected himself, "No, that's not right." He firmly said, "I have to win." Suhyun was thoughtful but only replied, "Okay, then try your best." He said seriously, "I'll cheer for you. But you'll have to try very hard." This surprised Yusung. Suhyun pushed up his glasses and analyzed for him. It's embarrassing to say this after losing, but the other students aren't easy to deal with. Receiving encouragement from Suhyun, Yusung smiled and replied, "Okay, I'll try." Yusung was determined that his efforts would surely be rewarded. Suhyun and the girl turned and left. Back at the dormitory, Sumire sleepily opened the door and groggily asked, "Who is it?" She was startled when she saw the person outside the door. It's you, Yusung." Yusung grabbed her shoulder and said, "Sumire," which made her panic and reply, Yes. Yusung said, "Help." Before he could finish speaking, Sumire unhesitatingly replied, "Okay." Yusung finished his sentence, "Me train." Sumire still didn't hesitate and agreed. Yusung said with satisfaction, "Thank you." She awkwardly scratched her head and smiled, No, it's nothing." Suddenly she asked, "But, why did you come here?" "In the dark forest, a medium difficulty dungeon, rank 4, the Soul Forest." Sumire stammered, This is. Yusung explained, "Siwoo told us where to conquer, right? We will challenge the Despair Cemetery." Sumire worriedly asked again, 14 different types of undead appearing together, and the dungeon boss is a lich, this difficulty is a bit. Before she could finish, Yusung interrupted, directly saying, "This is where we'll have a real battle." She excitedly asked, "Should I capture some undead?" She continued to ramble, "Ghouls, or skeletons, if I try my best, I can summon 3. Suddenly, a sound came from the forest. Yusung got into a ready stance and said, "They'll look like these guys." From deep within the forest, an army of skeletons emerged. The leader spoke up. When living beings dare to step into the land of the undead. He sat on a black horse. Behind him was an army. He continued, hatred will ensure you join us. Seeing this, Sumire asked Yusung in a panic, Yusung, the undead you want me to capture is? Yusung replied firmly, that's right, it's that one. His eyes turned black, a black power enveloped him, and he answered Sumire, I'll be done quickly. Yusung rushed toward the leader of the skeleton army, and the leader roared, stop them. A group of armed skeletons charged forward. Yusung moved through them alone. Wherever he went, skeletons shattered. While fighting, he muttered, this isn't a test. I can unleash my power freely, he said, then released his power, a white power enveloping the skeleton army. Now, only the leader remained. Yusung turned to look at Sumire and said, it's your turn, Sumire. Make a contract with the Death Knight before he revives. She hesitated and asked again, Yusung, the Death Knight is a rank 4 boss. Yusung scoffed and replied, do you think it's impossible? Sumire was worried and quickly explained, I told you before, I used to lose control of my mana. Yusung replied, that's why I chose this location. Sumire was surprised. He explained, my master's colleague, Aris, also experienced something similar. Mana overflow is caused by a large amount of mana wanting to pass through a magic meridian that is too small. Yusung calmly replied, in other words, Sumire has so much mana that her conduits can't direct them, which surprised her. Yusung reminisced, speaking to her as well as to himself, you can do it, don't let fear swallow you, you have to control it. He clenched his fist and encouraged her, you can do it, Sumire. His eyes looked at her full of trust, control your fear. Then he reached out and continued to reassure her, believe in the power that you're not aware of. Sumire, upon hearing him say that, wondered, power, I'm not aware of it? He continued to encourage her. It's okay to lose control. It's okay to fail. Following his voice, she gradually stepped forward. She faced the leader of the skeleton army. Yusung continued, you just need to keep trying. Sumire faced the giant Death Knight. She looked incredibly small. She unconsciously repeated Yusung's words, until I succeed. Then she reached out and touched the monster, muttering an incantation. The contract mark appeared on her hand, emitting light and black smoke, the signature of a transcendent. Then, a pink light appeared, surrounding the entire monster. That power seeped into its bones. Sumire thought, what is true misfortune? Her power had shattered the head of the skeleton general. Yusung was very happy to see this. In no time, that power had swallowed the monster. The image of a great witch appeared, and she muttered, no one escapes the witch's contract. Her eyes lit up as if there was a mysterious power. Call my name, and find your power. Her voice echoed, you are. Sumire's eyes were exactly like the great witch's, and at this moment, she finished her sentence, Laplace. Sumire's power enveloped the entire forest. She looked at it thoughtfully. Suddenly, she was startled and cried out. She stammered, what? What just happened? Yusung called out loudly, Sumire. He happily said, you did it, I knew you could. Sumire was surprised. She asked him, what did you say? Before she could finish, the Death Knight from earlier spoke to her, Undead Queen. She looked at them in surprise. The Death Knight and his soldiers had now made a contract with her. At the same time, he spoke, please, grant us new names. Mei Lin touched one of her ears and replied to the command, yes, understood. The back of you Wunik walked step by step through the door that was opening. We're ready, Headmaster. He stroked his white beard and smiled, let's go in. He and Mei Lin entered the observation deck. Now then, let's meet our proud new recruits, shall we? Outside was an extremely grand and large arena with multiple entrances, the Enahit competition hall. 2 red ribbons of Amy appeared on the screen to announce her presence. The headmaster has arrived. Her hand continuously tapped on the keyboard, and she hosted the program with excitement. The competition will start soon. Instead of listening to boring introductions, let's take a look at the faces of the participating contestants. The screen scrolled through the faces of Adela. First, a strong contender for the champion seat, Adela Hortensia from Gaon Academy. What's special is that she's playing solo. There's no need to discuss Adela's skills, right? Next, the Japanese team from Choton Academy. Then she turned to introduce another competing team. Team leader Seiji and members Oniyashin and Sakura. All 3 possess S-rank potential and are among the 7 stars. They're also strong contenders. Amy ate a piece of cake while typing a comment. Next is the Chinese team, but we don't have much information about them. The 3 of them are all of unknown identities, but they all have a mysterious aura. According to rumors, they're extremely strong, but this is their first time debuting, so we can't say anything for sure. The robot flashed a bright smile to switch to the next person. Now then, it's time for the most anticipated last team. And that team is none other than Sumire and Yusung. He was encouraging her while she looked incredibly embarrassed. Looking at Yusung's smiling face, another strange voice rang out. You Wonuk? The mysterious person concealed his face behind a screen. Even though he's a disciple of that bastard, he's not like him at all. The teacher behind the girl asked, Are you worried about Ryujin? She replied, Of course not. After all, these competitions are only for entertainment purposes. The cigarette of the other girl was still burning brightly and emitting a white smoke. However, the rank 8 hunter, the strongest swordsman in the world, looked at Yusung with his cold eyes. I'm curious to know how far he can unleash War God Awakening with that body. At this time, the arena was bustling with announcements from Amy. Nahit will start soon. Participating contestants, please gather in front of the designated gate. The competition statistics clearly displayed the images of the members so that the viewers could know. The Japanese rank 6 hunter Shoichi exclaimed, There's a solo player, and the Korean rank 6 hunter Himchan beside him added, Adela Hortensia, she's a well-known rookie even in the Academy City. The head of the Hunter Guild, rank 7 hunter Rosa, was in a very relaxed posture. Really? It's good that the Academy City has so much talent. They have 2 participating teams. She slowly opened her colorful eyes. She looked directly at the image of Yusung and commented, and that rookie is the highlight. Wonuk placed one hand on his chest and began to recite the oath, with courage, towards the unknown. The people in the participating teams quickly followed him. No one was an exception, including those with unknown identities like the Chinese team, and Glory. Yusung and Sumire looked up at him with various emotions. Adela still had that emotionless face as she placed her hand on her chest, for humanity. Finally, Wonuk shouted loudly to encourage them right when the lights flashed, I wish you all success in HIT. Sumire anxiously listened to what was being announced above her head. Students may now proceed to the gate. Yusung also quickly approached and said to her, Let's go, Sumire. He smiled very confidently as he repeated what they had discussed beforehand, just do it according to the plan. Sumire regained some of her will from his words and decided to go with him immediately. The 2 of them entered the space portal under the gaze of someone nearby. Oni watched them with surprise. That is, the gloomy scene inside the dungeon immediately appeared with a notification. Team 5, Shin Yusung and Hanajima Sumire have entered the dungeon, the Cemetery of Despair. Monsters without eyes but with large, sharp teeth appeared, as expected from a national-level hunter competition. A dilapidated castle appeared before his eyes, making him exclaim, The entrance is truly grand. Still with his usual calm, Yusung asked his partner, Sumire, are you ready? Sumire's hand went up to start using her ability. She released a stream of death mist with an incredibly determined attitude. Yes. Ghouls began to approach with their mouths wide open. Sumire's death mist surrounded her body like a shield. Sumire was tensely using her skills when Yusung's hand was placed on her shoulder. His attire gradually changed as he cheerfully suggested, I'll help you focus. The first ghoul approached them and opened its mouth to attack. Show them. Immediately afterward, a large hand squeezed the ghoul's head, the result of special training. A knight emerged from the dark mist with great power. He lifted the ghoul's body and commanded the other knights in a low voice, Warriors. Behind that leader were countless other soldiers, also moving forward. Kill everything in sight and protect the master. Amy and the audience were startled. Huh? What? Isn't that a Death Knight? The Death Knight swung his sword, although it looks a bit different. The power of his battle was incredibly large, which made the viewers exclaim, Impossible. However, there were still dissenting opinions. So what? The boss is still a level 5 monster. Even a class F can participate? Is Nihit lowering its standards now? Yusung and she still didn't care and split up. Sumire, let's start. The girl pointed ahead and suggested to him, I'll go that way. Although slightly flustered with her leadership role, Sumire still tried her best to command her army. Mr. Dark Knight, please follow me. Their dungeon was ruled by bosses with powerful levels. There were 2 bosses in the Cemetery of Despair, a high-level necromancer, the Lich King. The other one had a more bizarre and insane appearance, and the Soul Collector, the Grim Reaper. Yusung whispered to his teammate, although defeating just one is enough to complete the test. Sumire continued his words because she understood each other very well. But our goal is to defeat both of them. After that, Yusung ran in the opposite direction. So Sumire had to always encourage herself, I will become strong, like Yusung expects. Looking at the screen, Yusung's team had split into 2. Green sat swinging on the sofa and exclaimed with interest, that. Himchan rubbed his chin and continued to observe, it seems they've prepared well. In another location, a live broadcast of the match was playing on a screen. The girl next to Suhyun worriedly asked him, Suhyun, who do you think will win this competition? He pushed his glasses up to analyze carefully. I'm not sure. Most of the confirmed teams have participated in international competitions, so Shin Yusung and Adela are probably the most serious ones. Some viewers were extremely excited and cheered for Adela. After all, the winning team will be allowed to participate in the international competition. Una, sitting beside them, suddenly interrupted their conversation. The winner is obviously Adela. Una glanced at the screen and reminded them, "Have you forgotten who's number one at Gown?" Talking about Adela's background, it was truly terrifying. The legendary hunter of Italy, the granddaughter of Aiden Hortensia. From a young age, she possessed tremendous power, a user of the ice element, rare even among S-rank students. Adela's achievements in previous battles were also outstanding. In Italy, she defeated Leon of Bianca Academy and all other rookies to become overwhelmingly number one compared to her peers. Only one sentence could accurately describe Adela at this moment. She is one of the 3 most notable rookies in the world, born to be different. Her friend beside her immediately flattered her. That's right, the only one who can defeat her is Una. Una blushed but didn't act modest. Well, you're right. She continued to watch the battle with a predetermined thought in her head. The first place has already been determined. Returning to Adela, she was still walking very slowly inside her dungeon. In front of the cold girl was something very tall, making her look up. At the top of the stairs, a silhouette of a woman holding an ice scepter was waiting. She was the ice mage, Kella, a dangerous level 4 boss. Both faced each other, making Kella feel very interested, daring to step into my castle alone. The soldiers surrounding the walkway began to raise their ice bows. Adela didn't react and just kept looking at the ice mage in front of her. Then Kella suddenly gave the command, causing all the arrows to shoot at her and create a mess. All, attack. Kella smiled triumphantly. She's gone. But that was immediately extinguished by her surprise. Adela's pink eyes glowed from within the smoke. The memory of Yuwonok's words played again. Each boss monster has its own weakness, no matter how strong a hunter is. He still kept his old habit, talking while drawing on the wooden floor. If you don't know the weakness of the boss monster, you can't defeat it. The deep eyes of the headmaster stared at his drawing. This time, the boss monster we will learn about is... The chalk had reached the final stroke and stopped. The Soul Collector, the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper's distorted face was drawn very clearly along with his experienced advice. It is an immortal monster. If you don't use a specific method, you won't be able to kill it no matter how much you try. And now it was appearing right in front of Yusung. The Soul Collector, the Grim Reaper, danger level boss rank 4. He twisted his body like a ghost and whispered in a very hard-to-hear voice, "It seems I have more souls to collect." As soon as he finished speaking, the Soul Collector swung his scythe, forcing Yusung to dodge. His eyes were fixed on it, and he remembered everything his master had taught him. When facing the Grim Reaper, the important thing is not its main body. No matter how many times you defeat it, as long as it still has a soul, the Grim Reaper will continue to revive. On the monster's hand was a strange light placed between 2 unevenly growing teeth. The important thing is the lantern that the Grim Reaper is holding. Yusung slid through each slash and rushed straight towards the Grim Reaper. Its eyes, one big and one small, flashed from within its body. Yusung carried a thought in his head and was determined, "I will end this battle in just one strike." He struck a blow right into the monster's stomach, causing its body to dissolve. The Soul Collector lost its original form and looked like a torn piece of cloth. Yusung had already seized its weakness and held it in his hand. "Now, I just need to break this lantern." But this time he didn't do it right away but looked at the thing beside him. "But just this isn't enough for me." In his hand, he held a rather large stone. It was a unique artifact, the Soul Orb of the Grim Reaper. A mana orb created from the souls that a Grim Reaper has collected over 1,300 years. If you break it, you can absorb its power. Yusung whispered to himself, "I just got the artifact I needed." This was probably what his partner needed for the battle, so he quickly acted. "Sumire, wait for me. I'll be there soon." On the other side, Sumire was having to venture deeper by herself. The bone arm of the monster appeared in front of her. The second boss of the dungeon appeared majestically. A high-level necromancer, Arch-Lich, danger level boss rank 4. Its red eyes glanced back and forth and then looked at the person in front of it. A necromancer? In undead dungeons like this, necromancers can exert great power. Sumire stood behind her death knights while the person in front of her continued to ramble. But, he summoned a bone golem, danger level boss rank 4, and said with some contempt, "Even among necromancers, there will be differences in strength. Just in terms of size, the Arch-Lich's golem was much larger. Let's see who among us is stronger." His voice was so sinister that it made Sumire even more afraid. Young necromancer. Her hand clutched a piece of paper tightly as her head was filled with thoughts. "I'm so scared, my heart is beating so fast, and my legs are trembling." Sumire's little legs were about to touch each other as she understood the danger of the competition. This time is not like the other tests, I might actually die here. Yet her grip tightened even more, making the paper about to be crumpled. I really want to run away, but then Sumire became serious again and threw what she was holding on the ground. I can do it, I can change too. The Archlich rubbed his chin, assessing her summon. You don't seem fit to control that thing at all. Sumire kept reminding herself. Before Yasung arrives, another skeleton warrior stepped out from the black mist. I will fight the Lich. The Lich's red eyes looked at her for a moment to think. And he also began to attack as he controlled the golem's arm to rise. I will take it and your life under my command. Sumire loudly warned her knight, Mr. Skeleton, the golem. The skeleton warrior stood under the huge arm and raised both his hands. Although its body was much smaller, its power could not be underestimated when it could block a huge arm. The knights communicated with each other in a strange language and also began to charge. The ghouls clashed with the knight army, both sides not losing to each other and constantly fighting each other. Sumire was still very focused to speak with her summons. Mr. Death Knight, this is the moment. The leading knight replied to her very aggressively. Yes, my master. It reached out and directed the magic orbs that were being fired. Warriors, attack freely. The black magic orbs flew and hit the large body of the golem. Sumire was nervous outside but was secretly happy inside. Good, it worked. She frowned to increase her focus. Now, I have to go slowly. But the Archlich suddenly touched the mark on his knuckle. So, you intend to use that tactic. Around his bone golem, energy orbs appeared, setting up an array for the warriors to attack and using dark magic to assist them. The ghouls were affected by the magic, so their faces distorted. That is a basic but very effective tactic. Sumire's knight had just defeated a ghoul and was still standing there. Unfortunately, it looked up when a red light flashed in front of it. The Lich's dark magic was many times stronger when they were so large. You are not the only one who can use that. Then those orbs exploded on the ground and destroyed her army in an instant. Sumire hurriedly spoke to the Death Knight. We have to block it. The Death Knight immediately put up a shield to block the dark orbs that were rushing towards them. The crazed ghouls were summoned again and shambled toward her. It's useless to resist. The Lich's purple ring shone in his hand as he was very pleased. Your death. His hand opened up, making the ring emit even more energy. It is inevitable. A chaotic scene unfolded. Sumire shouted loudly, please, maintain the formation. The skeleton roared loudly, blocking the attacks. She pointed forward, frantically commanding, if the front falls, step forward and take their place. The skull, its red eyes glaring at her, thought, how interesting. The arrogant creature looked at each one, and thought again, the Death Knight is becoming stronger over time. Each one lunged forward with sharp claws, and it doubted, could it be? The skeleton wondered, is she gradually adapting to the battle? The skeleton that Sumire created, clenched its fist, its bright eyes looking forward. The skull thought, what terrifying talent. Countless monsters attacked wave after wave, causing the place to become ruined. Even so, you will still die here. Wave after wave of magic was awkwardly released by her. Please, Mr. Skeleton, hurry before he unleashes his skill. The skeleton, facing Sumire, had the air of a king. It arrogantly raised its hand, and spoke authoritatively. Too late. You can't stop me with those clumsy magic attacks. She bit her lip, her eyes looking at it, and in her head, helplessly thought, his mana is so strong that it makes my skin tingle. I can't stop him. Sumire's eyes narrowed, weakly thinking, but now his defenses are weakening. I still have a chance. Even if I have to use all of my mana, I must defeat him. She looked at the skeleton knight she had created, Mr. Skeleton. It immediately attacked the wall in front of it. The Death Knight used all of its strength to strike. The monster spoke up, praising, that was a good move. It still tried to hit each punch into the wall in front. The monster spoke loudly, however, you won't be able to break through the wall with your bone golem with that strike. Sumire's eyes widened. A light from her eyes flashed. This is the moment, Mr. Skeleton. The skeleton took a stance and jumped up. On its hand appeared a magic orb, heading straight for the other one. The other one looked up, and spoke. Above? The attack gradually approached it. The magic orb grew larger. War God Awakening, Black Moon. That attack made the skeleton kneel a bit. Its terrifying voice rang out, almost, I don't know what technique you used, but my body is already dead. Your attacks are ineffective against me. Sumire's face became tense, and it spoke up again. I will return this pain to you. That monster stood up, roaring, I will swallow everything. The clouds of despair. The stone in its hand gradually lit up. A dark amount of magic was gathered together. Sumire panicked, shielding herself with both hands. She looked around worriedly. The scene of everything being swallowed, causing her to say in fear, that dark fire is swallowing everything. The red orb in its hand engulfed everything. Its arrogant voice rang out, "Dispel summons. It's a basic skill. All that's left is a very pure mass of mana." Its mouth opened, and 2 sharp teeth appeared. "Thank you for the meal." Everything was gradually getting worse, blood splattering out. Its skull was covered in blood, and it roared. Its whole body was covered with dark magic, gradually transforming. For a powerful necromancer, the weak are nothing more than food. "Now then, let's end this." A white light seemed to tear everything apart. It looked at its target and spoke, starting with the most troublesome one. Sumire frowned, struggling to call out, "Duh, Death Knight." The Death Knight blocked the attack, his body gradually cracking. She tried her best, just a little more. The knight fell down. The Death Knight fell to the ground. She was silent as she looked at that scene. Sumire's face became pensive, and she thought, "Everyone, thank you for everything." Its eyes looked at her, and its voice spoke, "Mortal. This is the power of an artifact." That monster was fierce. Its red eyes looked at Sumire. "It's over." She muttered, "Okay." Sumire frowned, her face determined. "I was waiting for this anyway." Its attack descended. Smoke rose up. She closed her eyes, letting everything be determined. Yusung's voice rang out, and Sumire opened her eyes wide. After transforming, the Lich King's physical defenses are weaker. He praised, "Well done, Sumire." Yusung looked at the monster in front of him, and said seriously, "I'll take it from here." The monster was shocked when he blocked its lethal attack, and it roared fiercely, "Bastard, how can you block my attack?" His eyes narrowed, and he said in a cold voice, "For warriors, an undead lich is a troublesome opponent." Yusung kicked a magic-filled blow at the monster. Its body gradually cracked, and he said indifferently, "However, if it's a battle of attrition, that's another story." Its whole body emitted a blinding light, and then gradually disappeared. A system board appeared. Gaon Academy. Shin Yusung and Hanajima Sumire have successfully defeated the Lich. The Grim Reaper attack was successful. Yusung held the ring in his hand. The ring's attribute board appeared. Unique artifact. Ring of Immortality. The Ring of the Lich. The Master of the Cemetery of Despair. It can enhance the power of the undead. Skill. Master of Death. Summons undead monsters in proportion to the caster's mana. Skill. Clouds of Despair. Covers the sunlight with dark clouds. The undead grow stronger in the shade. Sumire was surprised. She happily said, It's a unique artifact. Congratulations, Yusung." He was thoughtful. "Ring of Immortality, huh?" Yusung looked over at Sumire. He smirked and spoke up, "I think this suits you better." She was flustered, and raised her hand, waving it quickly. "Please, no way, it's too much for me," he said calmly. "I already have equipment." Yusung took Sumire's hand and put the ring on. He said gently, "You can use this artifact." She was shy and hesitant. Thank you." In her head she was filled with confusion. He just put a ring on me." Sumire's eyes widened, her face flushing red. She suddenly thought of a scene. This is like. In Sumire's head appeared an image of her and Yusung getting married. He gently put a ring on her hand. Throughout the academy, excited cheers rang out. They won! They won! In their first appearance, the rookies from Gaon have successfully set a new record by performing a double attack. Hortensia was stunned. Her lips moved. She was stunned. Her eyes widened in shock, and then she said absent-mindedly, "I lost?" Throughout the academy, cheers of excitement rang out. They won! They won! Their successful double conquest earned them double points and a large number of artifacts. The rookies of Gaon have defeated all the other rookies and secured their victory. An excited voice from the system announced, "The champions will be awarded 2 artifacts and a huge sum of money. In addition, they will be qualified to participate in the international competition." A male student said in disbelief, "A Class F hunter defeated a Class S hunter? Moreover, in a double conquest?" The female student next to him was also confused. "I've never witnessed anything like this before." Suhyun put his hand on his chin and said with interest, "That guy, really?" On the other side, Bayan Chol shouted happily, "First place, it's first place." That evening, in a deserted place, Jin Chol crossed his arms and said to the person next to him, "Another monstrous rookie has appeared at Gaon." Jin Sung-ah, a member of the illustrious guild, smirked and said, "I think he can start working now." Kim Jin Chul, the CEO of Bayan Hunters, glanced at her and asked, "Do you mean he's on par with a veteran hunter?" She opened the system board to check and then replied, "I'm sure. He hasn't shown his full strength yet." He pondered, "Possibly." Yusung walked, looking at the system board in the hallway. He thought, "I did it." 2 system boards appeared. "You have acquired the unique Ring of Immortality. You are qualified to participate in the international competition." Yusung smiled slightly, his eyes looking at the ring's uses as he thought, the Ring of Immortality is an artifact that one can get at the 10th floor of the tower. It's like a source of infinite mana. He thought of his master's words. His voice echoed in his head. Currently, you don't have enough mana to awaken the power sleeping within War God Awakening and the Black Dragon Skin. In short, a hunter still needs artifacts to become stronger. Yusung looked up, his fist raised with determination as he thought, if I absorb this, I will get closer to a new technique. Sumire raised her hand to admire the ring. She muttered, Yusung's gift. She stared at it with wide eyes. So it's a ring. Sumire happily hugged the hand with the ring in her chest and muttered, ring. Suddenly, a voice called her, Hanajima Sumire. She froze. Oni crossed his arms, his back leaning against the wall, and said in a low voice, so you came to Korea after abandoning us. His eyes glanced at Sumire. She looked at Oni confused, Kirishima. He approached Sumire and then said coldly, even after abandoning us, you still remember my name. She explained in a fluster, I didn't abandon anyone. He interrupted her. No need to explain. His eyes looked straight at the finger wearing the ring. Oni said in a low voice, even if you disappear, it wouldn't matter. His eyebrows furrowed, and he said impassively, after all, you are of no use. Oni looked at Sumire reproachfully. In Japan or Korea, you never achieve anything. She clenched her fist, her face full of fear. He continued harshly, you're still just a useless coward. Oni moved closer to her. He placed his index finger on Sumire's forehead and called, hey, Hanajima. His eyes were distant, and a cold voice rang out from him. Japan, Korea. Where is it next? Her eyes gradually became teary. She whispered, no, I. Oni looked at Sumire with disgust. He said indifferently, what's wrong? Isn't running away your specialty? A hand was placed on his shoulder. Yusung looked at him and said, I think this brief reunion should end now. He looked at Oni and said harshly, it's time for you to leave. He turned to look at him. Sumire stammered, Yusung. Oni's eyes looked at him without any goodwill. He also glared back at him. At the door, someone called out loudly, Sakura, here, over here. Seiji and Sakura approached, Sakura's voice a bit scolding. Ishin, why did you suddenly run off like that? Seiji looked at everyone in a daze. He put his arm around Oni's shoulder, gave a thumbs up, and then said excitedly, hello, you guys are from the Korean team, right? You guys were amazing. The double conquest was top-notch. Sumire didn't say anything. Yusung smiled and replied, thank you, because I have great teammates. Seiji raised his fist. He said with determination, everything will be different in the international competition. He imagined ninjas in his head and excitedly said, after all, we all have hidden cards, like ninjas, you know. Sakura behind him had a dark face. I'm so embarrassed, stop it. Oni brushed off his sleeve and said coldly, that's right, participate in the international competition, Hanajima. Yusung and Sumire stood still. He continued, you and your team. After that, Oni turned around and walked away. His voice echoed, I will crush all your dreams. When those people had all left, Yusung asked, he was your former teammate, wasn't he? Sumire lowered her face sadly and replied, yes, him being grumpy was a daily occurrence. Her face was sad and melancholy as she said, after all, it's undeniable. In the crowd, Sumire walked ahead with everyone watching her. I ran away like a coward. Yusung was thoughtful. He suddenly called her, Sumire. Yusung leaned against the wall, looking at Sumire. He asked, what do I have to do to change your mind? Her face flushed red, and she looked at him in confusion. He looked straight into her eyes, and said gently, I don't think your actions are cowardly running away, but rather, because you didn't give up. Yusung took Sumire's hand, his index finger gradually touching her hand, and he said softly, the double conquest would not have been possible without you. Her face flushed red, and he said gently, I hope you'll believe what I say. Yusung looked at her system watch. He suddenly asked, do you think we'll really lose? He asserted, and I think we'll surely win. He then opened the system. Student Shin Yusung has sent you an invitation to participate in the international competition. Confirm qualification. Class F of Gaon Academy. Name Hanajima Sumire. Accept, decline. Yusung smiled brightly at Sumire. He said encouragingly, instead of empty words, show me your determination. Yusung stood in the middle of a space that resembled the universe. He suddenly thought, the soul orb of the Grim Reaper. Yusung's eyes intently looked at the orb. He thought again, although it's dense with mana. He gazed at the orb that was being lifted. Yusung's head was full of thoughts, but I still have to undergo a test of courage, overcoming the temptation of the evil spirits. A red spirit, full of anger, appeared before him. To be able to absorb it, The system's warning voice rang out. Danger, spirits are being released from the Grim Reaper's soul orb. Yusung looked up at each spirit that escaped and flew scattered everywhere. An evil spirit aimed straight at him. Yusung still stood still, letting it rush straight into him. Other spirits also followed that evil spirit and entered his body. In his head, he thought, the spirits are created from accumulated malice, trying to invade the challenger's body to seize control of it. A large spirit behind him whispered into Yusung's ear, causing him to widen his eyes in surprise. Then they will whisper into the challenger's ears. Its voice called out, making him freeze. Yusung. Its wicked voice spoke, wondering, has he really changed? That evil spirit reminded Yusung of all the negative thoughts in his past. A series of thoughts flitted through his head. Extreme misfortune, uselessness, inferiority. They whispered and pulled back buried emotions and memories. He kept calm, closed his eyes tightly and thought, but, arguing with these voices is truly meaningless. Yusung moved slightly and told himself, because essentially, their voices are also my voice. He lifted his bandaged hand, thinking, their doubts are, in the end, my doubts. The evil spirits still lingered around Yusung. He told himself, it's best to acknowledge them. He held both hands in front of him, forming a magic orb in the middle of his palms. As he pondered, I even have to accept that uselessness. Yusung sat calmly there, even though behind him were countless evil spirits tempting him. He told himself, because that is the real lesson behind this challenge. He stood up with a powerful aura of magic surrounding him. Yusung smiled gently as he looked at his hand. He said excitedly, wonderful. A voice rang out, attracting his attention. An unbelievable amount of mana. Yusung looked around to find the person who had just spoken. He looked into the distance and asked, how long are you going to keep watching? In the dark space, that voice replied, sorry, I'm just too impressed. Sung-woo gradually appeared before Yusung, speaking gently, but, since I became the student council president, this is probably the first time I've been discovered so quickly. Min Song-woo No. 6 smiled brightly and enthusiastically said, it's nice to meet you, Shin Yusung. Yusung looked at him indifferently and asked, what are you doing here? He was stunned, but immediately got to the point. If you want to get straight to the point, then okay. You don't intend to join the student council, do you? An image of 3 people in the student council appeared. Sung-woo said, you may not know it, but the student council is the most elite group at Gaon. He held out his hand in front of Yusung and continued, however, because you won I hat right after enrolling, you're no longer just qualified. In addition, this is an invitation directly from the student council president. Sung-woo extended his hand, implying that he wanted to cooperate. He wondered, surely, you won't refuse, right? Contrary to his expectation, Yusung said bluntly, I refuse. Hearing him say that, he panicked and said, what? Sung-woo started to threaten him, but he remained calm, with his eyes slightly closed. I already said that the student council president personally invited you. In case you don't know, it's best not to go against the student council. Yusung walked past him and said, I know that better than anyone. He paused and said in a low voice, that's enough reason for me to refuse. Sung-woo watched Yusung's back. He said, in short, that student council president is one of the people I must defeat. Cherry blossoms fell gently. Beneath them, he walked away. Yusung looked up at the cherry blossoms. The cherry blossoms stood out against the blue sky, a few petals falling down in turn. The branches were full of dense flowers. Yusung was completely relaxed, and he smiled slightly. Sumire ran up. She stood behind him and called out, Yusung. He turned his head to look. Sumire. Yusung asked, were you waiting for me? She replied, that's right. We happen to be going the same way, isn't that right? He replied, we're both in dorm 7, so. Before he could finish, he heard Sumire muttering, these cherry blossoms are falling. Her face flushed red. She said in a fluster, you know, cherry blossoms only bloom for 2 weeks throughout the year. He suddenly asked, does that make you sad? He looked at Sumire in confusion, who had turned her back to him and pointed her 2 fingers together. She said shyly, no, although they only bloom for 2 weeks, the cherry blossoms this year are very beautiful. She suddenly became silent. Sumire jumped up, her face red, turned back and called out loudly, Yusung. The system's voice rang out, first year, Class F, Hanajima Sumire, has joined the team. She bowed 90 degrees to Yusung, and said sincerely, I'm really looking forward to our next collaboration. Sumire puffed out her cheeks in embarrassment. Yusung crouched down, putting his face close to hers. He smiled gently and said, I'm the one who should be saying that. Yusung tilted his head and called, Sumire. A voice called out their names from a distance, making Yusung and Sumire look over. Yusung, Sumire. Renia and Siwoo ran over. She waved. Here, over here. He scratched his head behind her. You're too noisy. Renia asked, do you guys have any plans for the break? Sumire stammered, I was planning to go back to Japan. Great, and are you planning to visit your family? You said your family is in Australia, right? Renia immediately replied, yeah, but they're all busy. Renia looked at him curiously, what about you, Yusung? He looked at the two girls before him and asked back, my family? He smiled slightly, and put his hand on his chin and said, my family. In Yusung's head, an empty dining table appeared. They're all busy too. On the other side, Bayan Chol looked at the system board and muttered, Adela and Shin Yusung. His eyes intently looked at the system board. He raised his hand to stroke his beard, thinking, if considering their skills, choosing either of them wouldn't be a problem. But the only question is, who would be more suitable to represent Korea? Bayan Chol smirked, okay, I've made my decision. At a large shopping mall, Yuna wore sunglasses, her arms crossed and walked haughtily. On both sides were bodyguards carrying piles of things, and a girl was following her in a fluster. She looked at the system. Headmaster Jin Byongkiel has sent you a message. Yuna opened the system board. Joint mission request, City Patrol, Kim Yuna, Shin Yusung. She smirked with interest. This is going to be fun.